Sword of Coming Chapter 877. The old scholar hurriedly put the handful of melon seeds in his sleeves and walked towards the two of them quickly, but instead of talking to the closed disciple first, he looked at Ning Yao and smiled. Ning girl, there is such a guy who can't be idle. Be tolerant. If you really feel wrong someday, don't care about things right or wrong, don't feel that you're unreasonable, wonder if you're going to make a fuss, don't think about it, just feel free to complain to me. This is me as Mr. Qin Pingan's person. I will definitely help you scold him and never show favoritism to this kid. It is estimated that only Ning Yao quarreled with Qin Pingan in the world, and the old man would not help his students. Human affairs, in fact, the difference between good and bad is often just a sentence or two, and the good and the bad can be reversed. Angrily, there were one or two heavy words that shouldn't be there, and one or two words of comforting nonsense were missing on weekdays. Because the closer the person is, the easier it is to feel that what the other person does is justified, and that everything just needs to be silent. As a result, the more you feel that the other party should understand everything, it is often the time when the other party does not understand anything. Ning Yao smiled and nodded and said, "Okay, I will learn more from someone about the complaint." Just like everyone thinks that Ning Yao's sword training aptitude is too good, she should be the #1 person in the colorful world, there is no suspense. What feat Ning Yao does is not surprising. She is the undoubted backbone of the ascending city. Over time, Ning Yao will be regarded as the next Qin Qingdu on the road of swordsmanship. Old scholars don't think so. The old man just thinks that the Ning girl in front of him is just a young junior who wants to sue and no one can sue. Ning Yao first left, saying that she might have to retreat for 2 days. She is on the path of spiritual practice, and she has a handful of retreats. The old scholar took Qin Pingan's hand and patted the back of the close disciple's hand. He didn't say anything, just smiled and said, "Hey." He Shou, who was sitting on the great wall of sword chi, had already asked 5 sword repairmen together about Jiantua Yueshan, and spread the letter to the Confucian temple at the fastest speed, so Mao Xiaodong quickly sent the letter to Mr. Now Mao Xiaodong is the director of the Academy of Rites, and his official position is second only to that of the Academy of Liquor. Official. Qin Pingan is on his husband's side, making no secret of his fatigue, but still has bright eyes and smiled back, "Hey." Most people don't know it well. In fact, there is one stone seal carving and the word "hey" is silent. An old talent once made a small joke. In his early years he did not turn over miscellaneous books. Apart from the principles of sages and sages, his knowledge was not broad enough, so that he flipped through a bookstore with a beautifully carved plate and saw a "hey" in the seal. I mistakenly thought that the mountain leader of the academy who engraved this seal was a very funny scholar. When the old scholar had a statue in the Confucian temple, he went to the academy to visit the mountain leader. Unexpectedly, he was an unsmiling old-fashioned master. The old scholar took Qin Pingan and sat on the bench at the door, took out a handful of melon seeds and gave them half of the melon seeds. "Everything is safe and sound, and my husband is very easy to do, but I saw Zheng Juzhong and Luo Pashangxiazing choosing the location of Tongyi's house, as usual." Qin Pingan was surprised and he stopped talking. The old scholar said, "It is a very happy thing that my husband can help a little bit." Qin Pingan nodded and did not say much. The old scholar smiled, "The kid from Dongshan, this time I reunited with Zheng Juzhong." He was very deflated and outraged. At last he looked like a young boy. "So he took the initiative to ask me for help and talked with your husband. I hope that the next sect of Luapa Mountain will be the first sect leader, so Chao Sunny's side needs your explanation." On the way back from Xingyang Mountain to Luapa Mountain, everyone on the Dragon Boat Ferry has already discussed a set agenda. Regardless of the second sect outside Luapa Mountain with a separate patriarch hall, it is a shaman with the title of Zongman. Zong, or down the mountain, without the first name of Zong in the Confucian temple, Chao Qingyang was the first sovereign or mountain lord. Miyu, Chongqiu, Chui Wei, Sui right side, a few settled down there to practice, while Chui Dongshan and Pei Qian just went there to help for a few years. The former mainly stared at the neighbors Jindingwen and the Sanshan Feudalwen, the movement of Yaozong. The latter is responsible for the relationship between Qinghu Palace and Pushun Thatched Cottage. Qin Pingan said, "In fact, I had this plan from the beginning, but when I talked about it with Dongshan, I didn't think he was interested in taking matters into account, so I just retired." The earliest idea of Qin Pingan was to let Chui Dongshan of the Fairyland be the next sect lord. There is no need for the name of the sect in the Middle-earth Confucian temple. Whoever talks about it, he has to change his name. This is also a good thing for Chao Qingqing. You can experience a few more years with Chui Dongshan. The time is right for the worldly relationships, the realm of cultivation, and the relationship between the mountains and the mountains. The time is ripe for Chao Qingqing to be the second suzerain or Chen Pingan. I'm worried about whether I'm squeezing the seedlings and encouraging him. No matter how prudent Chao Sunny is and no matter how tough his heart is in the eyes of Mr. Chen Pingan, it is inevitable that. What about Chao Sunny's academic affairs when dealing with a matter? In the future, how can he go on a study tour with his friends and see all the great rivers and mountains? It was just that Cui Dongshan was unwilling at that time, and Chen Pingan would naturally not move out of the air of a husband. But now Cui Dongshan is willing to go out in person so he can solve everything. As for Chao Sunny's side, even if he believes that Chao Sunny will not think too much, Chen Pingan will of course explain clearly. Anyway, it's just a pot of wine and a few words. After all, Luopishen has never had the official custom of saying halfway deliberately and letting people try to figure out what they want. Everything is spread out. The old scholar glanced at the spider on Chen Pingan's shoulder and wondered, this fellow Taoist is? Chen Pingan gave a general idea in his heart and then said, Xiaomo, this is my husband, you just show up here, don't be too restrictive. A snow-white spider the size of a copper coin jumped forward from Chen Pingan's shoulder. When it landed, it was already the little Mo wearing a linen shirt, yellow hat and blue shoes. When Sheng, the old scholar, has stood up, nodded vigorously and said, Hay comes from the sky, good fortune is on earth, good deeds and good deeds. Mr. All got up to greet him and Chen Pingan had to follow him. This is a peak sword repairman of the ascendant realm of the 10,000 character. While the old scholar smiled and looked at Xiaomo was also looking at this thin and short scholar. Both sides are very upright and straight-eyed. In Xiaomo's view, compared to the average mountain cultivator, the old man in front of him is actually not that old, but he looks very old. This shows two things. This person practiced late and then waited until this person's realm was high and could be reborn, but he didn't even think about changing his appearance. Lu Daoyu said that the identity of the gentleman, the Haoren Wenxing, is the fourth top spot in the Confucian temple. It seems that the fighting ability is not too high, that is, the knowledge is great. Relying on his supernatural powers, Xiao Mo knows that Wenxing seems to be well positioned, with 3 continents and rivers, namely Pasuozu, Tonggishao and Fuyezhou. It's no wonder that he can be the husband of his own son. Is not referring to the 14th realm, but that Wenxing alone chose these 3 continents as the land of harmony, which happened to be the broken mountains and rivers that were hit by that battle. But the so-called fighting ability is not high, this is just, not high, in the eyes of Xiao Mo, specifically referring to the level of lethality. After all, the cultivators of the same generation that Xiao Mo dealt with only Jianxiu, there are Qin Qingdu, Long Jun, and the Yuanxiang, who is close to the first ancestor of the military. However, there was also a genuine scholar who made Xiaoma extremely memorable. The other party was one of the most holy master's beloved disciples, with a tall crown and a tall stature and extremely high swordsmanship. The old scholar said, Brother Xiaomo, if you encounter an entangled poppy rogue in the future, I will report my name. If it doesn't work, Brother Xiaomo will move out of the worship status of Luopa Mountain. Regarding this savage sword repairman with a long history, it is not suitable for recording at the Confucian temple for the time being, let alone being reported to the world by the Shanshui mansion. The old scholar only needs to go back and say hello to Yaxing and the 3 masters and vice leaders of the Confucian temple. In fact, this matter is not at all embarrassing. This little Mo, who has slept for thousands of years in the bright moon, has only just woke up. The 10,000 years of grievances from the previous 2 worlds have not been mixed, and his life experience is very innocent. The old talents have been brewing. The wording how to ask the Confucian temple for credit. For example, for the next sect to observe the ceremony, our Confucian temple will not send the 2 leaders to show up to congratulate you like a word. If you go to the 2 deputy, it seems that it is not as good as the one in the other. Isn't that the reason? Xiao Mo nodded first and then said, I'm sorry that Xiaoma dare not associate with Mr. Wensheng's peers. The son once reminded me that when I reach Haoren, I must go to the countryside, follow the rules and do not chaos and etiquette. Secondly, Xiaoma is not worshipped by Laopaishan nowadays, but just a dead man by his side. Finally, Xiao Mo saw Wensheng today. He was pedantic but approachable. Xiao Mo was honored. The old Xiucai suppressed a smile and glanced at the closed disciple standing aside. Where did I find such a polite and staid baby bump? I almost mistakenly thought it was a gentleman and wise man from the academy. Chen Pingan immediately understood and smiled with Xiao Mo. Mr. Speaking is of course bigger than a student, Xiao Mo. This is also a way of going to the countryside. You have to tell the order. Since my husband says you are worshipping, then you will be right away. We have enshrined it in the name of Luopa Mountain, If your husband calls you brothers and sisters, you just accept it frankly. The old scholar caressed his beard and smiled, warming his heart, just like warming a pot of rice wine in the winter, adding 2 eggs and making some ginger and sitting around the stove. Of course, the most comforting thing is the word surrounding. One person just sits alone, and at least 3 or 2 people are required to say that it is an enclosed furnace. Xiaomo is a little embarrassed. On the Great Wall of Jianghu I chatted with Dao Yulu. I heard Dao Yulu said that his son has 3 hobbies. He can't be beaten by thunder, and he respects his teacher since he was a child. So the elders are very good. I like to be a good fortune boy, so I have friends all over the world. In the end, he liked to keep accounts. Lu Daoyu said that if he didn't believe it, he would be clear when he arrived in Dali capital and saw the master disciple of your family's son. There are 2 benches at the door. The old scholar stretched out his hand and pressed it. Brother Xiaomo, we all sit down and talk. Qin Pingan said, Sir, why not find a place to drink? The old scholar worried, Can you drink? Qin Pingan smiled and said, The realm is with the wine. Old Xiaocai said, Then let's go to the Renyuniyun building and stay close. If Brother Xiaomo was not present, the old scholar would directly take the closed disciples to the Huoshan temple to find Senior Aunt Feng for a drink. There is a flower shed and the place is shady. Cool wine. The old scholar dared to touch his conscience and said that he and the closed disciple were not like that. Whoever dares to say no words and has the ability to stand up, the old scholar will return all the drinks to him. We walked to the alley together. In the mountain and water Taoist hall at the entrance of the alley, the old monk Lu Jia was pulling his disciple Zhao Duanming to drink. Found the 3 outside the alley, Lu Jia immediately removed the dojo restriction, and first held a fist with Wen Sheng. The old monk had recently become very familiar with the old scholar. Qin Pingan introduced, This is Xiao Mo, a strange Mo, we worship at Luapa Mountain. Lu Yu nodded with a stern face, Let go and let him go. If he is stupid he will block the way when he sees a person, and I will give you Qin Ping's surname. The old monk hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't hold back and shouted in his heart, Master Qin Shan? Qin Pingan immediately stopped and asked, What's the matter? The old cultivator seemed to be a little hard to tell. He bit his head and asked, No foreigners will pass by here recently, right? Somehow let me slow down. Qin Pingan smiled and said, How can I guarantee that other people's legs don't grow on me? Anyway, I will leave the capital soon. Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief. The old monk glanced at the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes. Xiao Mo immediately smiled and nodded at Lu Jia. Qin Pingan said in his heart, After I leave, Master Lu Xian remembers to clean Brother Xiu's house. Is to remind the old monk to wait until he leaves Dali capital. He can go there to pick up books. Lei Fa now Qin Pingan dare not say how to be proficient, and he is still too far away from reaching the summit, but Qin Pingan admits that he has to talk about entering the room. Just talk about the Minecraft. I watched it from the ruins of the old Dragon City battlefield, and then displayed it again and again on the Tuition side, and eventually became proficient, and his accomplishments were not low. Old Lu Jia blushed, and then he was puzzled. Shan Lord Qin has made up a Lei Fa book so soon? Could it be that he happened to meet the Huangzi nobleman from the Heavenly Master's mansion on this trip? There is such a coincidence in the world. Thing? Because according to the previous agreement between the 2 parties, it was necessary to wait until the Master Qin Shan traveled the Middle-earth God continent, went to the Longhushan Heavenly Master's mansion as a guest, met that friend, borrowed the book and looked through it. Law cheats. Then the book was accidentally left in the Renyuniyun building. Lu Jia accidentally picked it up, turned a few pages casually, and then taught Dao Fa to his apprentice who had been struck by lightning several times. Lu Jia had even thought of the reasons. Drinking high, sleepwalking the ancient thunder divisions, met A and taught himself thunder. The more Lu Jia thinks about it, the more wrong he is. He has the temperament to say what he has to say. He said straightforwardly, Qin Pingan, don't regret it halfway. You think this is tricky? You can't borrow the thunder method from Longhu Mountain. You just can't save your face. Let me fool me with a few words of Lei Fa's mantra on the mountain? This is absolutely impossible. I have been to Lei Fa at first and I don't understand at all. I would rather not teach anything and I will never let this kid go astray. Qin Pingan explained, Don't worry, this book of thunder techniques written by me will not be too low in rank and promise not to mislead people. Zhao Duanming only needs to practice step by step and there will be no mistakes. As long as there is a slight omission, Master Lu Xian will do it. Go straight to Luapa Mountain to block the door and curse the street. Lu Jia smiled and said, What a Qin Pingan, tease me, how long will it take you to figure out a deep thunder method? Let's just give it up, the two of us don't have this kind of thing and you don't need it. I feel embarrassed. Besides, I can't do things like blocking the door and cursing the street. Do you regard yourself as a Huangzi nobleman from the Heavenly Master's mansion, or as a great celestial master with a foreign surname from Dragon Tiger Mountain? Qin Pingan was in a daze. Indeed, he just walked through the barren world because the saints helped to go back and forth, and there was Lu Chen's 3 mountain symbols over there. Only the length of time was really not long, but you can think about it a little bit. But it seems like a world away. 2 selves in the 2 worlds, one has crossed half of the wild world, and the other has traveled Aquarius Island from north to south. During the 2 landscape journeys, I really met too many people. Too many things. Xiao Mo suddenly said, "My son with Leife, he has a lot of accomplishments." Lu Ping was taken aback because the apprentice was present, so he talked with Chen Pingan from his heart. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Anyway, don't worry, then wait until I have traveled to the Dragon and Tiger Mountain of the Middle-earth Divine Continent. Then I will separate the books into 2 volumes and Master Lu will pick and choose." Lu Yu nodded. Master Qinshan is still veteran and stable in doing things. This is the case. Approaching the entrance of the house, Xiao Mo said in his heart, "Young master, this monk, is it too bad for you?" Qin Pingan laughed and said, "Under the world, being a master and a husband are actually the same. It is inevitable that they will suffer from gains and losses. There is no reason to speak." The old scholar stroked his beard and smiled, "Yes." In the small alley, the boy suddenly said, "Master, Mr. Chen seems to have changed." Lu Yu turned his head to look at the sword fairy in Qingshan, and shook his head, not feeling it. Arriving outside the book building, sitting around the stone table in the small courtyard, Qin Pingan took out 3 pots of wine and 3 flower cups. Xiao Mo got up and took the flask and glass. After taking his seat, he suddenly remembered something. That woman named Lu Ji, the sword fairy, is very murderous. Look at my eyes, a bit infiltrating. Qin Pingan said, "It's not that Lu Ji deliberately targeted you. She has such a temper. Lu Ji is actually just like me, a foreigner in the strict sense, but she has long regarded the Great Wall of Jiangxi as her hometown. I will wait for Lu Ji in the future. Tianji's ascension realm will be one of the most lethal ascension realms, and the murderous aura will be even heavier by that time. If Lu Ji can thoroughly refine that life-flying sword Beidou, and then carefully refine the 8 long swords hidden in the sword box, Lu Ji, who is good at attacking but weaker than defense, will become both offensive and defensive. Similar to Fu Lu Yuxian, the great master of Dragon and Tiger Mountain, and the real fire dragon. In the future, Lu Ji's kendo achievements may actually be higher than Qi Tingji's. Is certainly not definite, but even if there is only such a possibility, it is already great. Xiao Mo said frankly, "My son, besides being a sword repairman, according to the way I am on the mountains in the world today, I can still be counted as a formation master. Apart from that, the only thing I can tell is that I'm still relatively good. Good at weaving robes. Other than that, there is nothing to do with it. Sword repair. Array division. Weaving the robe. Being able to master one of these things is already a series of sweet pastries enshrined on the mountain." The old scholar screamed, always feeling that this set of wording sounds very familiar, and when I think about it, I immediately suddenly realized that this is my unique secret to finding wine and drinking. Xiao Mo raised his hand, spread his palm, and placed a pile of blue bamboo tubes of different heights and thicknesses, which looked pocket-sized and lovely. There were as many as 50 or 60 in number, some of which were several meters or even tens of meters of cloth, rolled up, brought together in one tube. More are several pieces of robes that have been formed, scaled in a green bamboo tube. Xiao Mo said, "According to the mountain rules of the Howran world, if you worship the mountain alone, you must have a meeting ceremony and ask the sun to help distribute it. After all, Xiao Mo is a dead man. He does not act too arrogantly so as not to be found by someone who is interested. These are." The robes were really boring before Haotsai Mingyue fell asleep in my early years. They were woven casually. Therefore the rank is not high. According to the assessment of the mountain today, even the half-sage soldier can't be called. Before Haotsai Mingyue fell into long sleep, Xiao Mo left 6 Dao veins in the wild world. According to the sun's calculation, now there is only a Dongfu with a sect head to the south of the wild. It is more like an old Dao vein that has been passed down for thousands of years. The rest are either it dissipated over a long period of time or it was changed. For example, Jingqicheng's several weaving techniques clearly came from Xiaoma. This does not mean that Jingqicheng is the Taoist line of Xiaoma. It is very likely that one of the lines of Dongfu has been absorbed by Jingqicheng. For the Taoism in the wild world, this actually has no Dao origin with Xiao Mo. The old scholar took a sip of wine and slid without interrupting. Qin Pingan reluctantly said, Lu Qin taught you again? Didn't you say that you're worshipping the mountain, you have a stepping stone in your hand? Xiaomo smiled and said, the Son of Heaven counts. Luapa Mountain's direct disciple was added to worship. It is estimated that one robe is more than enough. As for the standard robe woven by the female practitioners of Kaik Mansion, the monks of Luapa Mountain are not suitable for wearing them. But this does not mean that Qin Pingan can accept the gift with peace of mind, so he directly refused. Xiaomo, when you finish the agreement you can leave Luapa Mountain. If you still want to give it to me I won't stop you. Before that we won't talk about it. Xiaomo had to turn his head and look at the old scholar. The old scholar smiled and said, Xiaomo, this matter is up to your son. We have the rules of the awe-inspiring world, but the ethos of a mountain and a mountain is not so rigid. Xiaomo flipped his palms and put away the bamboo robes. The second meeting at the Patriarch Hall of Lay's Peak was a celebration of the official establishment of the sect of Luapa Mountain. At that time, there were 43 members of the Patriarch's Hall genealogy, plus 36 guests. When the celebration was over, Qin Pingan simply hit the iron while it was still hot, so that Luapashen had another group of guests. Xiao Yunyan of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect, Nan Pasuazhou Mrs. Yen Yen. Huan Yun, the old man who served as an enshrinement in Yunxiang City. Aiizhou woman sword fairy Xie Songhua. Jinwu Palace Yuaning Jianxiu Lu Jiqing. Li Fuyu is now the second seat of Zhenjingzong. Fengshua Temple Great Sword Immortal Wei and Jin Dynasty. Refers to Xianfeng Yuan Lingyan. And Duckweed Sword Lake, there is a Jian Xiu Qinli with the nickname Little Hermit. On the side of the Confucian Temple, Luapashen has received a new offering, and the old sword has been repaired in you. Recently the old people have been on the side of Luapashen. As for the ability to abduct 1 or 2 sword fairy embryos, it depends on the old man's own ability and the kids' respective fate. In the Great Wall of Jianxi there is another Chao Jun. There is a saying on the mountain. The number of enshrinements and the level of realm indicate the depth of a fairy family. In Kiching it can explain a sect, the mountain road leading to the ancestor hall, how wide the road is. The old scholar began to talk about business. Peace, have you ever thought about one thing? The monks of the monster race, especially Xiaomo, have a long history and have lived for thousands of years or thousands of years. Don't even talk about them. Maybe you can't count both hands. It's the Ascension Realm early or even the peak of the Ascension Realm. Why, except for the great demon with the pseudonym Lu Fian, there is never a great demon successfully entering the 14th realm. Speaking of this, the old scholar has already mentioned the wine glass. Brother Xiaoma, I just talk about the matter, don't mind, I punish myself for a glass. Xiaomo hurriedly held the cup in both hands, leaned forward, looked sincere and spoke sincerely. Mr. Wenxing speaks straightforwardly and the people of Changliang speak openly. He is obviously treating Xiaomo as half of his own. The cup is good, a larger bowl forget it, there is only a boring sip of wine in the world, and there are no words to bend around on the wine table. Not much to say, I will be bored first, Mr. Wenxing is free. Xiaomo raised his head and the wine glass was empty. Qin Pingan was a little helpless. Where did you learn about the humanity and the knowledge of the wine table? I also reminded Xiaomo to follow the customs in his hometown. Is this unnecessary? The old scholar filled himself with another glass of wine. Just take the compassionate brother Xiaomo, and I have to leave one more. Qin Pingan reminded, Sir, this is my own drink, drink it slowly. Is to remind my husband that since it is his own drink, even if he finds himself a pot, it does not take the slightest advantage. Only drinking other people's drinks, drinking more and less, drinking fast and slow, is knowledge. But the real reason, whether it is Mr. or Qin Pingan himself, is not suitable for drinking too much and too fast at the moment. The old scholar is very worried. Qin Pingan suddenly whispered, Aunt Feng, there seems to be 100 daisies and hundreds of flowers. The old scholar patted his thigh, before you leave Aquarius Island, you must be alone with Senior Aunt Feng. Qin Pingan nodded, Go with Mr. The old scholar continued, although it is extremely difficult to be in harmony, this is true, Xiaoma including Xiaomo needs to sleep well and it is not false, but those old thrones, is it possible that the qualifications of cultivation which one will be worse? Qin Pingan nodded, trusting the first disciple of the great ancestor of Yueshan, the culprit's monastic aptitude is very good. The innate advantage of the monster's real body toughness also brings an acquired advantage. There is a threshold between the two which is whether or not they can practice. Demon race mountaineering practice, getting started is far more difficult than human race, but once the refining is successful, the lifespan of the monster monk will be much longer than that of the human race at the same realm. Is like a kind of compensation in the dark. Xiaomo put down his wine glass and said softly, "It's Bai Zhe." The old scholar nodded and sighed. "Right, it's because of the existence of Brother Bai. Bai Zhe has all the real names of the monks of the world monster race. This is Bai Zhe's life and magical powers. There is no need to tell from the other party. As long as the refining is successful and the real name is available, it will be recorded on Bai Zhe's side." The old scholar glanced at Xiaomo. Xiaomo laughed and said, "I can't fight and I can't grab it. I have long accepted my fate. Not only me but all the monks of the same generation who chose to sleep and recuperate back then were the same." Actually, Xiaomo and Bai Zhe not only fought but also too. Once felt that Bai Zhe didn't seem to be able to fight. One time I learned that Bai Zhe was actually preparing to help that little master, casting a great tripod on the top of Howran Mountain, and engraving countless real names of monsters. So Xiaomo had that trip to the bright moon. The old scholar broke the secret. In fact, Bai Zhe is embarrassed by himself. The real name is not something he can do if he wants to return it to someone. This is probably the only thing that Bai Zhe is on the path of spiritual practice that can be called a great deal of freedom. This means that Howran is as embarrassed as Xianxia Confucian Temple. If Bai Zhe died, the ascendant great demon in the wild world is like losing a pass. The original Bai's existence is like all the ascended great demon in the world. An insurmountable moat needs to be recognized by some kind of great road. Among the 14 realms. Once Bai Zhe died and disappeared, it was like losing some kind of road restriction. If Bai Zhe did not die, the two worlds would attack each other, and the war would be fierce, and the wilder monster clan would suffer more casualties, and Bai Zhe's realm would be infinitely close to the 15th realm. Bai Zhe's combat power would become an unprecedented the 14 realms of the Comer. Simply put, Bai Zhe will be so powerful that he can be regarded as Qin Qingdu who is not bound by the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The old scholar turned his head and looked at Xiaomo. "Xiaomo, the world is no better than your hometown. Now the world is not tens of thousands of years ago. You may be a little uncomfortable at first to let you follow the customs, but I believe I will become more and more familiar in the future. Relax." Xiaomo nodded and said, "Now I have just arrived in Howran, and I have not seen many people. I may not believe in the world after 10,000 years. It will definitely be much better than before 10,000 years, but I am willing to believe in the sun and the sage." The old scholar is very pleased. Xiaomo brother is so reasonable, it is a pity not to go to Luapa Mountain. Qin Pingan drank wine slowly. On the capital side, in addition to that personal grievance, Xuanhuan should be invited to drink. And in the same year as Chao Qingqing's imperial examination, the young official of the Honghe Temple named Xuanhu went to the bookstore together. Maybe to go to Su Gaoshan's residence in the capital. It's not necessary to meet someone to say what to do. Then say goodbye to her husband and then take Ningyao, Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing all the way south, returning to Luapa Mountain and going to Yang's shop by himself. Listening to Xiaomi Li, Zhang Shanfeng saw that he was not on the mountain, so he went to Su Yuanxiao first, and said he would wait for himself over there. So before going to Tongyi's Hao, Qin Pingan went directly to Xianyu County, Qingyuan County to drink. On the side of Luapa Mountain, the old Jinshu Yue was still waiting for him on the mountain, because Yue would choose the sword embryo and accept it as his disciple. According to Xiaomi Li's statement, this matter is a bit frowning. Qin Pingan doesn't feel any loss. The 9 sword fairy embryos can finally leave a few to practice in Luapa Mountain and follow the fate. After that, the site was selected and the sect was established in Tongyi's Hao. The group of people just happened to be able to take the fairy wind kites, sent by the mysterious dynasty, travel across the continent, and by the way, investigate a relatively stable business route for the fairy. When he arrived at Tongyi's Hao, Qin Pingan had to go to the Daquan dynasty first to see old General Yao. Waiting for the next incident, I originally planned to call on Lu Jinglong to travel the Middle-earth God continent together. Now because of the fall, Qin Pingan will definitely be delayed for some time. Qin Pingan will also start a true retreat as a monk in addition to refining his life. He will learn what he has learned, cast a furnace, and strive to re-enter the Jade Realm. And then go to Taihui Jianzong to find Lu Jinglong. In fact, there are so many things big and small. But it will not make people embarrassed. The table at the gate of Luapa Mountain, after Lao Xiaocai and Zheng Juzhong left. The big white goose, the boy in Xingyi, the girl in black, look at me and I look at you. Chen Lingjun is not a fool. Seeing how polite Mr. Wenxing was with that person earlier, he knew immediately that he might have been bullying him again. Chen Lingjun pulled his head, a little sick, unable to lift his spirits, and asked, Why before leaving, the man would put up a strange saying that teaches people to be ignorant, saying that his master has climbed high. Xiaomi Li grinned. It is Mr. Zheng who is talking kindly to Jing Qing. Alas, Jing Qing is still not very good at cerebellar core. I always wanted to recommend Jing Qing to enter a certain jianghu school, which is the very hidden and extremely high-threshold bamboo house. Has been mentioned twice before. Nuanshu's sister always refused to agree, and Pei Qian's attitude was ambiguous, so she had to drag it all the time. Qin Lingjun and Cui Dongshan asked in their hearts, "Who is that person? You must know the identity of the other person. Tell me about it?" So as not to scare the millet grains. Cui Dongshan was a little absent-minded and waved his hand. "Don't know, you just need to know his surname Zheng. Old talents are still very good. Only he can let Bai Zhe first and then let Jing Juzhong change his mind. Sell him face." But Cui Dongshan is not happy in his heart. Qin Lingjun raised a sleeve, wiped the tabletop and said aggrieved, "Is there any use for knowing the surname Zheng? It must not be Zheng Juzhong." Cui Dongshan rolled his eyes. Qin Lingjun is also too lazy to think about it. Anyway, it's a thing of the past. He smiled and said, "Brother Cui, what do you think?" Cui Dongshan said, "I am thinking about the name of the next sect." Qin Lingjun patted the table lightly. "Unfortunately, naming things, the master is best at it. Why do you join in the fun when you are the next sect master?" Cui Dongshan nodded solemnly and said, "I am." Qin Lingjun laughed and said, "Millet, do you think this joke is funny?" Millet Grain scratched his face and did not speak. Cui Dongshan suddenly feels very good. The husband has gone through the barren world and done so many things. Will become different, very different. Although the fall is severe, it does not matter. It's only the realm that has fallen, but Dao Xian has skyrocketed. Cui Dongshan does not need to go to Dali capital to see Mr., and he can imagine what the situation is now. Previous Mr. You can try it. Sir, now. You talk to me well. Sword of Coming Chapter 878. In the courtyard of Renyuniyun building, the old scholar was drunk and said that he was going to a place, and had long wanted to go to thank you personally. He also said that it was the origin of his money bag and made it the first time in his life. The more decent four treasures of the study, really like a scholar studying in the study. Chen Pingan knew where his husband was going, so he didn't follow. The old scholar left the yard and traveled to southern Beijing alone. "I used to be in the back alleys of a small country in Zhongtu Shenzhou, one big and one small, 2 masters and apprentices. Every time I am poor, I can't open the pot. Am idle. I can't read a book and am full, so we'll have nothing to do and stand together. At the door, eagerly waiting for the boy's letter from the family to arrive. In fact, they didn't care what was written on the letter. They weren't waiting for the letter anyway, but the money for repairs sent with the letter, that is, the boy from a foreign country. The salary for studying with local talents to study as a teacher, money as a hero and courage, and occasionally meet some festive days such as the birthday of the most holy master, the host is far away in Aquarius, and a fortune will be given to the nominal Mr. C.C. Jiajing, give a Jiagung bag with varying amounts of money. The first time the poor and sour talent dealt with the banknote, he received a very generous sum of respect. That time I received the boy's letter from home, and there was only one light letter. The Xiao Kai trembles vigorously, not to mention the broken silver. There is no sound of copper coins. The Xiao Kai was dumbfounded. The young man squatted at the door with his hands in his sleeves. In fact, quite guilty. It's not that there's no money at home, but his grandpa complained that he ran away from home privately and walked so far as soon as he left. He dared to walk directly from Aquarius Island to Central Earth Shenzhou. He also found a young scholar who was only a scholar. In the family of Cui family in Aquarius, it is not difficult to find a school gentleman and wise man to be the master of the school. Therefore, the Cui family always pays a lot of money every time. The young talent at the time did not complain about his students, and squatted over the threshold with the young man, but comforted the young man. "I can't blame anyone, I must blame the gentleman for his inadequate knowledge. It is too much for your parents." Because at the end of the last letter, the young grandfather gave a few crosses to the Imperial Examination System art strategy question, which is regarded as a real talent for the school talents. The Xiao Kai turned on the lamp all night, and forced out an answer sheet with more than 1,000 words. She only felt that her knowledge was exhausted and she was really not good at it. If she was really good at it, she would have passed the exam, right? When the teenager replied a letter, as soon as the letter was sent out, the scholar actually regretted it, and was really worried that Shujin and Jiejing would all run away with Ichi in the future. The boy grabbed the envelope from his husband's hand, squeezed it into a ball, and threw it on the wall opposite the alley. The envelope rolled back in front of him. The boy was so angry that he got up and stepped on a few feet. The husband grabbed his arm. Angrily said, "Such a broken home, if you go back you won't go back anymore. Don't talk angry." The scholar dragged the boy back to his original position, patted the student's head, bent over, went to pick up the envelope on the ground, smoothed it gently and opened it, only 2 pieces of paper with the family letter on top, except for some elders who are often talked about by old tunes. At the end of the words there is a sentence, "You sir, you are averagely educated, but most of the fame of a talented person is true, and the words are good." And the piece of paper below is a genuine bank note, 100 taels. Xianxia laughed from ear to ear. The young man on the side was smiling brightly. After that, the scholars managed to save some money again. The poor scholar who was a teacher at the Ishu school was so poor that there were only a large collection of books left behind. Under the instigation of the students, they opened their own books. It's not a taste to be able to formally accept students and teach a profession when you're in a store. Switching from teaching to evangelism is actually what Xianxia is looking forward to most. It's not a taste to be with a bunch of kids who wear open pants every day. It's because of shame. Learn about a sage? Can pull it down, it's not earning less money. Later in those years, Xianxia accepted a few more students. Among the 4 direct disciples, the boss has always been a purse and has been with Xianxia for the longest time. The second child is a stunner who eats and drinks, and the youngest has tendons. I am also a person who has no money in his pocket, and his appetite is not small. In those few years the scholar always felt that he was scammed. Fortunately, the boss did not know where he kidnapped a child. He was smart. At first glance he is a seed of reading. The most talented first disciple seems to be very repulsive to the imperial examination, and his temper is still stubborn, and most of them are not expected. So whether he can emerge as a master of xianxia, it depends on this little disciple. He is not partial to him. After that, the talents finally had a good life that they had never dreamed of before. Even his own texts are all printed out. Although the sales in the bookstores are average, few copies have been sold in the end, but for a scholar who is a scholar, it is equivalent to a matter of establishment. Landing, how can a talent expect more? Except for the old third Junchen, in fact, Cui Yang left and right and Qi Jingchun are all the talents who watched them turn from teenagers to youths year after year. Many years later, the scholar became an old scholar, and finally accepted a closed disciple, Qin Ping'an. As for the knowledge of the literary sage, there is no match. What kind of literary sage is in the Confucian context? It has the merit of surpassing the sky and the sea. Whether you are boasting or cursing, old scholars don't take it seriously. You are willing to boast or curse, and they all have their own reasons. Anyway, I want Delaney as a teacher and a teacher for those students. But the only thing that old scholars cannot tolerate is that a few students have been wronged. I am a scholar, so I will be at the Confucian temple. The Howran embroidered tiger, who has been out of the Kaiyun bureau, has deceived the teacher and defeated the ancestors and betrayed the Wenxing line. He has hidden his head and tail in the Howran world, and has been wandering for many years. Finally, he chose a northern barbarian land in his hometown of Aquarius as a foothold. Point: as a teacher of Dali country, you must spread the knowledge of deeds to a country or even a continent. Cui Yang never returned to the Cui family after returning to Aquarius. The old scholar knows why. Cui Yang is half guilty and half angry. In the capital city of Dali in a foreign land, the national teacher Cui Yun named his bookstore as Rinyuni Yun. The old scholar came to the top floor of a CUIS library. On the top floor, there is a small attic that needs a ladder to get up and down. The old scholar came to the window and looked out the window. When people see the birds chasing the clouds, they can't catch them. This time, Cui Dongshan is willing to take the initiative to ask Ying to be the next suzerain, which is a good thing. A comeback. Qin Pingan and Xiao Mo walked out of the alley and went to the inn together. Xiao Mo has been careful in a lot of this big capital city. This is the capital of a country in the awe-inspiring world, the place of the best kind. Maybe this is what xianxia had envisioned at the beginning of the year. Xiao Mo asked, "My son, are there many monks in the 14th realms of Howran now?" Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "No matter which world it is, it's not much above the Ascent realm. The monks, if they are not divided by the world but only by the human race and the monster race, you will find that the number of monks in the 14th realm is very small, and each has its own reasons. The existence of the Patriarch of the Three Teachings. Intercepted real name of Baizhe. Qin Pingan intends to open a wine shop on that night ship in the future to welcome visitors from all directions. Whether you can drink without spending money depends on your own abilities. As for the name of the next clan, Qin Pingan has actually thought about a big basket. This is probably the embarrassment of being too good at naming. Finally, it's about natal porcelain. There must be a result. Anyway, it is a matter of 14 taels of silver. They are not far away. Master and Madam were not in the capital. Chow Mamuda said that he was going to Nangsanfang to find an imperial examination who was working as a servant at Honghu Temple. In the same year, Mr. Wenxing said he wanted to bask in the sun at the door and wait for people. Pei Qian was alone. One person walking in the yard is a second entry yard with a small door open at the southeast corner. It is actually the ancestral house of the shopkeeper Liu's family. It is specially used to entertain guests who are not short of money, such as some who come to Beijing to run officials. After all, it is close to Ichi Lane and Cheer Street. The house is divided into east and west wing rooms. At the moment, the main house is empty. Chao Qingqing lives in the east wing room and Pei Qian lives in the west wing room opposite to it. For help, app can steal book tickets like stealing food. Come steal your friend's book tickets and vote for my book. Pei Qian seemed to be walking, but in fact he walked in a fascinating way, sinking her shoulders and falling her elbows to get angry. She no longer needs to pay attention to the pile frame itself or the length of her breath, but every time she breathes in pure martial arts, it is in the small world of the human body. The rain everywhere in the mountains, rivers and gas houses is drought, and the day and night changes drastically. This is like in charge of the world, deliberately controlling the changes of the four seasons and the changes of the weather in the mountains and rivers. On the trip to Luzhou and Beiju she was practicing walking in real time all the time, and she was unwilling to let herself just wander around. This made Pei Qian start to have a unique experience of her own in the matter of walking. There is no situation in the pile and the punch has a magical meaning. This not low evaluation was given by Li Er, but not by Pei Qian. So while feeding the fists on the Lion Peak Mountain, Li Er taught Pei Qian a method of breathing and vomiting that was taught by his own teacher, a pure invigorating operation, specially used to regulate muscles and blood. The fist theory that Li Er finally taught Pei Qian is great. The pile framed together like the mountain standing still, the divine will move like a turbulent flow. This is a great pattern of interdependence between mountains and rivers. As long as you reach the top of boxing and reach the end of martial arts, then a pure martial artist is no longer protected by a fist like a god, but, the body is the temple and I am the god. This is the true end point, and it is the so-called god arrival, after the 10th realm is full of vitality and the 2 levels of return to truth. Pei Qian learns very quickly and he will be able to teach it once he teaches. The key is to be able to apply what he has learned in the subtleties of daily life. That's why Li Er will speak honestly with Pei Qian. If you don't talk about fun, it's better than your master's martial arts aptitude. Pei Qian heard it and instead of being overjoyed he was guilty. So she felt that Senior Li Er, who was in the same hometown as Master, was very capable of teaching boxing and feeding boxing, but she was a little confused in speaking. In the yard, besides Pei Qian, there is also a girl who dreamed of jianghu since she was a child. She was born and raised in Beijing. She was the treasured daughter of Lao Liu's shopkeeper, named Lu Chai with a small print of Tammy. She was sitting on a stool by the side at the moment. Put a wash basin rag beside your feet. The girl usually helps the family with the trivial work of sweeping the courtyard house and washing and drying the bedding. She earns some money from her father to save money for those heroic biographies, vernacular koans, and tales that are privately engraved by booksellers and are scented with ink. Fiction. The direct teaching girl often sighs, it's a fresh story that can't be bought, no matter how you earn it, you can't earn enough copper. The girl's name or boudoir's name really doesn't seem to be the origin of the little merchant's portal. The old shopkeeper is a typical late wife. She is worried about her daughter's female celebrity. He really doesn't follow her mother at all. He is also crazy all day long, afraid that she will not be able to marry. But when she thinks that her daughter will marry someday he can't bear it. Stay worried. Anyway, the 2 sons in front of the daughter were both promising and filial. In addition to the fact that the daughter was still young, the age of the older girl who was missed by those matchmakers was still far away, the shopkeeper Lu was not in a hurry. The girl originally planned to learn art with that sister under the guise of taking a break here. All the foreigners who stayed in the inn were related to the book on the counter, but the girl did not go through it, and the children of the rivers and lakes, who were riding horses and riding the whip, acted with integrity. Only knows that she is the direct disciple of the Outlander Ranger and swordsman in Qingshan. Well, she will be the same in the future. But Lu Lukai saw the young woman closed her eyes, almost like sleepwalking. Hesitated for a while, the girl asked softly, "What is your sister's last name?" Pei Qian opened his eyes and said, "Zheng Qian." The girl's eyes sparkled, "Good name. It has the same name and surname as my most admired Grandmaster Zheng. There are two kinds of sayings on the rivers and lakes. One is that Grandmaster Zheng, who is like a flower like a jade, has a slender figure, but contains the power of weeping ghosts and spirits. There is also a rumor even more so that xianxia, although a young woman, is 1 foot tall, strong, big and round. With 2 punches, the monster sword repairs and the monster martial arts are all turned into powder. The girl seemed to think of something very interesting. She couldn't laugh. She finally stopped laughing and said, Sister Jing Qian has a pseudonym just called Pei Qian, right? Mine is just a few steps away from Ichi Lane and Cheer Street. I can often hear some gossips on the mountains and rivers and lakes, and the previous competition in the arena near the fire temple. I heard another rumor that Jing Qian, whose real name was Pei Qian, came from a place called Luapa Mountain. As for more fairy anecdotes and anecdotes about the rivers and lakes, the surroundings were very noisy at the time, and the girl was hard to hear with her ears up. Losing money? Make money? How come it seems that 2 names are competing with money? Pei Qian smiled, did not speak. The girl smiled because she thought her statement was a bit ridiculous. Sister Jing Qian, have you read a certain book of landscape travel? A few years ago it sold very well. I was too late to buy it and I would regret it. Pei Qian said, I have seen it. Master's landscape travel notes in and out of the book. Pei Qian, who is a great disciple of the mountain, have read a lot. The girl curiously asked, Are you practicing boxing? Fisting is easy and difficult to move. One is difficult, the difficulty is to learn to walk first, and the other is difficult, the difficulty is to drip through the rocks, persevere. Pei Qian continued to take a walk and said, My master said that he practiced boxing hard for 2 or 3 years, and lost his boxing for only 3 or 2 days. The girl jumped up and said, This boxing theory, I know. As long as you pass the martial arts gym, you can listen to the crackling sleeves fighting inside every day, otherwise it will be humming on the mouth and then suddenly stomped and stepped on the ground. Bang, bang, bang. According to the top of the boxing chart, this is called the bone twisting and turning like firecrackers, right? The old saying in boxing chart is good. The fist is like a tiger down the mountain and the foot of the dragon sea. Sister Jing Qian, how do you see my posture? Does it count as a beginner? Pei Qian was speechless, and it was not good to pour cold water on the girl, so she had to pretend that she didn't hear the girl's gibberish. As for the girls wandering around there, Pei Qian looked very cordial, just like when she was a child. The thought of Master and the old cook Wei Hai looking at them and the look in their eyes made Pei Qian feel a little flustered. The problem is that Pei Qian didn't play around with the crazy swordsmanship he created when he was a child, but he was learnt by Xiaomi Li. When Pei Qian saw the girl, there was no sign of stopping, so he had to stand still and said, It is easier to learn boxing, but it is difficult to practice boxing, but it is difficult to learn boxing. What is going into the hall is to win a boxing intention, which makes my generation of martial arts fighters. If you have the help of the gods. Greater effort is the person controlling the fist, not blindly following the fist, just like giving orders to the gods. A fist, 18 weapons, casually held in the hand, natural samples like arms instructing, understand? The young girl pecks at the rice. It is necessary. I don't understand. Pei Qian smiled and said, There are thousands of boxing in the world, with hundreds of martial arts, and the only method of boxing. The girl was confused. How do you tell? Pei Qian squinted and smiled. There is no one in front of him, and Wu is no second. Master's father once said that everything can be done, but the martial arts training can't give way. If you ask people about the boxing, you must have no one in front of you, and you must have no one else in front of you when you get to the top of the martial arts. And Grandpa Chui also said a similar reason. The girl blushed and she was fascinated, domineering. Pei Qian laughed and asked, Why do you want to walk the rivers and lakes so much? The girl sat back on the stool and said without hesitation, When the children of the rivers and lakes are so free, you can get to know many weird people and things without having to marry. It is best to carry a large bag of golden melon seeds before going out and wandering the rivers and lakes. Genie Z, look for a wine shop on the side of the road, stop, throw a big silver ingot after drinking, put a sentence on the shopkeeper to check out how proud it is written in the book. Pei Qian smiled and said, When you go out, don't be greedy for generosity unless you see it at first sight. It's the rules of the world without showing yellow and white. Besides, the real martial arts people live a life of licking blood and earning some money. Easy. The book says that the hero was stabbed by someone, his brows were not frowned, but the wound was bandaged and he would continue on his way. Maybe you don't have to turn a page, the hero has healed the wound and is elsewhere. The chattering and laughter on the wine table are full of vigor. But it is a truth that Meng Tong knows for 100 days. The girl was stunned. Pei Qian hesitated and said, You try to slap yourself with your best effort. The girl was confused when she heard it. Is a liar. Have you taught boxing like this? I just saw that the young woman didn't seem to be joking. The girl was a ghost and she really slapped herself severely, making her jump straight. Looking at the indifferent Zheng Qian again, the girl pulled her head and said, "Missed, right?" Pei Qian smiled and said, "Anyway, it's much better than me." In the old dragon city back then, the female champion Huang Ting once squeezed Pei Qian's muscles and bones, so that Xiao Heitan opened his voice and cried loudly. So that someone feels so distressed that they immediately say not to practice boxing or not to practice boxing. The girl made up her mind. "Zheng Qian, I want to understand. Starting from today, I want practice martial arts and learn boxing." Pei Qian was a little surprised. "Forget it, I really can't be a master or a preacher." The little dumb Ahu is actually in a similarly bleak situation. This titular disciple of the mountain who gets along well with the shopkeeper Shiro is obviously closer than him. Anyway, when he gets to the master, Ahu doesn't have a good face. Yes, cherish the word like gold and be a little dumb. Pei Qian walked to the girl, raised her palm, gently rubbed the girl's cheek. The redness and swelling soon disappeared, and smiled. "The person you want to find is actually not far from you, so you don't have to go to the rivers and lakes to find them." The girl rubbed her face and couldn't understand what the other person was saying, but the girl only knew that Zheng Qian in front of her was definitely a female hero. She shouted, "Sister Zheng Qian, I want to learn boxing." Pei Qian smiled and shook his head. "I'm still not good at learning art myself, so I can't teach you any martial arts. Not to mention learning boxing, it is too hard." Chao Qingqing was at the counter, chatting with the shopkeeper Lu for a long time, and came here to talk to Pei Qian, but when she saw that she was giving people, teaching boxing, Chao Qingqing stopped and stood quietly. The corridor is far away. Since the younger brother and Mr. both suggested that he retain the status of the editor and repair officer of the Imperial Academy, Chao Sunny was not a pedantic person, so he gave up his plan to resign. Qin Pingan brought Xiao Amo to the house and Chao Qingqing said, "I have seen Mr. Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. Gentle and elegant, polite and cheerful. This shows the good atmosphere of the Luapa mountain." Lu Lukai saw the foreigner and immediately said goodbye to Pei Qian, took the wash basin and left the house. Qin Pingan said to Chao Sunny, "Just talk about something outside, it's related to you." Chao Sunny immediately went to the main house and brought 2 chairs and a bench. "You can sit on a bench with Pei Qian, Mr. and the strange guest sitting on chairs. The corridor under the eaves is spacious enough for the 2 sides to sit opposite each other." Xiao Amo thanked him and then sat down. After Qin Pingan took a seat, he noticed that Pei Qian was abnormal and asked, "What's wrong?" Although Pei Qian had a guilty conscience, he honestly replied, "At the entrance of the inn earlier, I couldn't help but took a peek at the little girl's state of mind." Qin Pingan smiled and nodded and said, "I just watched it." Pei Qian looked surprised and wondered, "Master is not angry?" Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "Before the rules were strict, I was worried that you would go off the road. Now you don't need to be so restrained. The rivers and lakes are sinister and unpredictable. You have to protect yourself." At the age when the rules should be established, Qin Pingan was on Pei Qian's side, not at all ambiguity. He was worried that Pei Qian learned boxing and there was no taboo about punching. However, when Pei Qian got older, he already had questions about right and wrong. If you have a clear understanding, then you can't be too tightly bound by the rules, and you can't be ignorant of flexibility. Pei Qian said, "Master, don't worry, I will try my best not to make mistakes every time I walk around the rivers and lakes, and I will correct them if I make mistakes." This is the first time Pei Qian has spoken to Master like this since he grew up. It's hard to imagine that the Pei Qian in front of me is the little hedgehog who would compile chestnut collection in private. It is also hard to imagine that it is the little black charcoal who will haunt Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang, and each of them will instill in her a hard-working Xiao Heitan who can be able to work within 20 years. Every truth is like a fairy. Probably only when you walk to the ferry crossing in the future and see some people with your own eyes will you really experience it. There are also some sage doctrines in the books, old people's old sayings, and the words and deeds outside the books, just like pavilions on the road. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Okay, Master believes in you." Then Qin Pingan smiled and introduced Xiao Amo. "Both are my disciples and students, Pei Qian the martial artist in the mountain. Chao Qingqing, Dallas Imperial Examination Leader." Qin Pingan and the 2 introduced the Xiaoma next to him, the Taoist named Shizhu. Now he is a stranger with a pseudonym. He is a sword repairman from a foreign land, and his realm is not low. Of course, after all, he is a friend who has never met Master. Unfamiliar people will practice swordsmanship in Luapa Mountain. They are of the same origin as your Uncle Lu, and you can call Senior Shiju in the future. This time you will be included in the Jianghu Mountain and Water genealogy and serve as the honorary honor of Luapa Mountain. A man and a woman with a calm expression and no pretense. A martial artist stood up and clasped his fists, a scholar said. It seems that for the demon clan of Senior Shiju, there is no emotional ups and downs at all, and he is very accustomed to it. Xiao Mo clearly perceives the sincerity of the young couple in front of him without having to use his natal supernatural powers. Has already got up. Xiao Mo slightly bent over, clasped his hands and smiled. I'm just a few years old. I don't need to call any seniors. It's better to follow the sun. You just call me Xiao Mo. I prefer the latter. Then Xiao Mo began to pull out his sleeves. 2 meeting gifts are ready. Qin Pingan smiled and said, forget it. I have a wealthy chief Zhou at Leapashan, which is enough. And Xiao Mo is no better than Jiang Shangzhen, who has a cloud cave-blessed land. Giving a gift to his family is even worse. Xiao Mo insisted, my son, it's just a little care and it's not a precious gift. Ms. Pei and Master Chow are both the son's closest direct descendants. There are no gifts, I can't make sense or reason. The sons have already rejected those robes, so this time, let me put them on their side. Putting on an elder's shelf? Qin Pingan had to nod his head. Xiao Mo is in Luapa Mountain, and he must be very popular like a fish in water, not worse than Zhou Chief. Good at persuading wine, that is the ability of the wine table to compare with others. He likes to toast, never hides himself, but also finds himself to drink, that is, he sees the character in the wine. Sure enough, he complied with the old saying that things are gathered together and people are divided into groups. Xiao Mo looks a lot like himself. The quality of the wine is very good, that is, the skill of persuading the wine is not good. At the liquor store back then, the second shopkeeper was recognized as avoiding fist but not alcohol. As for the second half of those gamblers and alcoholics, anyway you will fall with a punch. The gibberish on the wine table cannot be taken seriously. Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing, they both looked at Qin Pingan at the same time. Qin Pingan continued to nod. Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing only then accepted the gifts. Qin Pingan knows the depth at a glance, and they are 2 treasures of the Xiadongshan, hidden treasures with a higher rank than the objects at hand. This kind of mountain treasure, not to mention ordinary monks, even Qin Pingan does not have a baozhai. The 2 and Senior Shiju thank you. Xiao Mo smiled and said nothing. Seeing that they didn't seem to have the intention to sit down, Xiao Mo just sat down. The 2 children, the family education is very good. Could it be that Lu Daoyu lied to himself? Deliberately described that old Liju Dong Tian with simple folk customs as a dangerous dragon pond and tiger's lair? Is it a surprise for yourself? Xiao Mo couldn't help but said with a heart, Master, Miss Pei is very young, she is almost the end of the martial arts. Little girl on her master's side, she is very respectful, and Daoyu Lu is obviously joking with herself again. Qin Pingan did not reply with his own voice and laughed. Pei Qian is very young, but there is a woman named Bai Ren from the Moor dynasty in the wild world. She seems to be about the same. She is already 50 years old, and I heard Lu Qin said, the female national teacher of the Qingshan dynasty, came to an end even younger. Pei Qian nodded. Chao Qingqing can be clear, and he can clearly see the kind of triumph in his husband. In fact, when Qin Pingan had borrowed 14th level monks from Lu Qin before, he had already seen the weirdness of Pei Qian before he left the capital of Dali, making him a master. He couldn't laugh or cry. Because Pei Qian is currently in an extremely mysterious situation. She is in pressure. Is something unheard of even Qin Pingan. Pure Wufu's breakthrough, you can't decide whether you can break the bottleneck. If you say it, you have to endure. Once the bottleneck is broken, you don't have to go up. Besides being able to break through, which pure martial artist in the world would be like Pei Qian? However, Xiao Mo is used to fighting and killing, and most of them are fighting on the top of the mountain, so he is not surprised at too many things. Xiao Mo is now even more curious about that Chao Sunny. Pei Qian is now practicing boxing really just for pressure. She has to choose a place and a certain day before she can be among the limits. Qin Pingan was straightforward, and directly talked to Chao Qingqing about Cui Dongshan's thoughts. Chao Qingqing's answer is very simple, Mister, it's actually the best. It was because I saw that my husband and the younger brother seemed to have made a decision, so I bit the bullet and agreed to the sect master. Qin Pingan smiled and said, we are not in a word. For such a big thing you have a little idea about how normal it is. Then you should tell your husband directly. Forget it, this time it is because your husband has not thought about it well. I will pay attention to it in the future. Yes, so are you. Chao Qingqing nodded and said, remember. Qin Pingan was a little sorry. You could have been the youngest suzerain in Howren's history. Chao Qingqing is not good to say anything about this matter. In the past, the Confucian temple was strictly controlled, and the Qi trainer was the master of a sect. He had to be in the Yupu realm, which was an iron rule. Yamazawa Yishio wanting to be in the 5 realms before the age of 40 is simply a dream. Even a genealogical master with a deep heritage and orderly inheritance, it is as difficult as climbing to the sky to become a monk in the Jade realm at this age, one of the few in Howren's history. Moreover, even if there is such a genius for cultivation, it will not allow the pride of the heavens with such a good aptitude to be consumed by those tedious mountain affairs. It is too much to outweigh the gains. Moreover, in the big sect, even if there is that the next sect, such a young Yupu realm, is not directly suitable for the current sect's suzerain. A Qi trainer is like a broken bamboo on the path of spiritual practice. It is very likely that it is a lot of bumps and a lot of trivialities. As for himself, Qin Pingan almost never pays attention to anything, and even walks through the rivers and lakes, but worried that there is not much fall. But when it comes to Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing, it is very different. For example, Chao Sunny won the 2nd place in the ranking. When Qin Pingan is here when he is happy, it is inevitable that there will be a bit of slander. My student, how can he be the 2nd place in the ranking, not the champion? As a result, Qin Pingan had to endure his visit to the capital this time, so as not to steal a trip to the archives of the Ministry of Rights, and pull out the article on the countermeasures for the palace examination of the new champion, to see if it was the paper of his proud student, but the handwriting was not. Then, will the pavilion body be distracted by the older readers, or is it deliberately lowered by Emperor Songhe? Chao Qingqing said, "Sir, I just found Xuanhuan. He said that her husband is very approachable, not the kind of pretending to be unassuming but really unassuming. Sun Chu is not the kind of person who likes to flatter anyone, let alone tell me to tell her husband on purpose. He is willing to say that he must have sincere admiration for him. He also said that if he becomes a high official in the future, he must be like a husband. No matter who you get along with, you can feel like a spring breeze." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "That's good, I didn't let Sun Shuban think that you were looking for the wrong husband." Qin Pingan understands the mood of the real fire dragon. When going out, he was regarded as the real fire dragon on the ground. In the past, the great celestial master of Longhushan was still regarded as the master of Xuanhuan. In fact, there are subtle differences between the two. Qin Pingan said softly, "I've been thinking about a question during this period of time. I won't talk about the problem itself. I will come back to review it with you later when the right time is right. In any case, I might take care of it more on Luopashan's side. Some things, big and small, if you see it, as long as you feel that something is wrong, I will take care of it. But in the future, I may let go more of the next sect, so if you stay with Dongshan, you may have this or that. You can think about this matter before you go to Tongyi's Hao, when he is the sovereign and your little brother." Qin Pingan shook his head. "It's not possible, it's for sure." Chao Qingqing nodded. "Sir, in fact, those who are not afraid of quarrels as long as they are not arrogant, they can learn from each other's strengths and make up for deficiencies." Qin Pingan hummed, "Remember, it's not just with your little brother but also with many things. It's one thing to like and be good at reasoning, but you must consider the emotions of others and pay attention to the cause and not the effect. Do not fully approve or deny others based on good or bad results. When encountering a problem, solving a problem is practice." Speaking of this, Qin Pingan spreads out his hands, pats lightly, and then his palms are emptied. "We praise a person and we have a sense of proportion. In fact, we keep a proper and decent distance. If we are far away, we are alienated and too close. It's easy to be demanding of others. So you have to give everyone close to you a little room, even room for making mistakes, as long as you don't involve big righteousness. You don't have to be too clumsy. Those who are careful will often ask for full blame if they are not careful. The problem is that we don't realize it, but the people around us have already been injured a lot. As the old saying goes, a person who is knowledgeable must have a sense of subtlety. In fact, it is also a good reason to say it conversely. A person who is good at seeking subtlety should also have an understanding heart. Furthermore, you must tell yourself that no one is a clay bodhisattva who has no half-burning energy. Everyone has his own emotions. The emotions themselves are the truth. Many times, they seem to be reasoning with others. When will they really be seen? I'm in, but I don't feel like I'm tolerating it. That means we have truly cultivated our minds. Qin Pingan smiled and asked, "I ask you, it's a matter of fact, okay?" Chao Qingqing said without hesitation, "Very good." Qin Pingan asked again, "Then have you ever thought about whether one party is justified, or is it denying the other party?" Chao Qingqing was taken aback for a moment, thought about it, nodded and said, "It is true." Qin Pingan said, "So it's a good thing to talk about the matter itself, but once someone has reason, thick neck, staring eyes and loudly speaking, what will happen? Obviously, the truth itself is right and the reasoning is a failure. True communication and reasoning is to learn to recognize each other first. You need to be calm and then use a lot of approvals to clarify the one or two negations you really want to make clear. Of course, all your words still need to be sincere and can't be fake. This is extremely important and it must be put on the front of the piece of heart." Chao Qingqing thought about it carefully, nodded and said, "I understand the order of the Sir in this matter." Qin Pingan smiled and asked, "Think again. Are there any omissions?" Chao Qingqing began to think deeply. Pei Qian sat on the bench beside him, hesitant to speak. Qin Pingan looked at Pei Qian and nodded with a smile. Pei Qianzhuang said courageously, "Master, this seems to be, only the strong can make clear the truth. For example, it's the party who doesn't have any reason but has a higher status. On the contrary, he gets a little impatient when someone is reasoning with him and immediately stares at him. What should I do? For example, the head of the family in the gate below the mountain lord on the mountain, the suzerain, and the rulers if they are not so reasonable? It seems like the master's principle, it is difficult to make it clear." "Master, I just talked about it casually." Pei Qian's voice became lower and lower as he spoke. In the end, Pei Qian scratched his head and said, "It shouldn't be interrupted." Qin Pingan gave Pei Qian a thumbs up. "Yes. This is the crux." Then Qin Pingan asked, "So, Pei Qian Chao Sunny, do you think you can be strong? Or do you want to be strong? Or do you think you are strong now? The strong is the weak. No, is it compared with me or with the millet grains that are temporarily not high in realm, or a child's baishan? Or with whom?" Pei Qian's eyes lit up and he nodded vigorously, "Understood." Chao Qingqing stood up and chatted with her husband, but there was no word. Pei Qian couldn't follow to get up and clasp his fists. Unreasonably, he gave Chao Sunny by his side a blank look. Flattery. Lupper Mountain is the only thing that this guy's sloppy beard and horseback slap, the deepest hidden. Qin Pingan muttered, "The world's personal, don't ask outside." Chao Qingqing asked suddenly, "Mr. is worried about Luopishan and Xia Zone. In the future many people will behave like Mr.?" Qin Pingan smiled knowingly. As expected of his proud disciple, he nodded and said, "I have such concerns. When a sect, the founder of the mountain's personal brand is too clear, it will naturally be effective. This kind of thing, there are advantages and disadvantages." However, Qin Pingan still hopes that whether it is the current Luopa Mountain or the next sect of Tongyi's Hao, even in the future, there will be a descendant of the Patriarch's Hall, the children of the inner sect and the unregistered outer monk, but everyone's life all can be different, each has its own beauty. Xiao Mo sat aside, listening from the beginning to the end, admiring his son, orderly, dismantled, refined and reunited. "I feel more and more rough and I have a lot to learn from the son. It's just that on the side of the son, it is estimated that there is really no end to learning." Qin Pingan got up and said, "You two will go back to Luopa Mountain and wait for me." Pei Qian is a little worried. She has roughly seen the current situation of Master. Qin Pingan waved his hand and left the inn with Xiao Mo. Before the southern downstream calendar, Qin Pingan built a wooden food box from Yuzhang County. Now he is going to go out to buy some cakes and a pot of wine in Beijing. Anyway, he will spend a total of 14 taels of silver. Then take a trip to Dei Palace. If you don't drink a toast, drink fine wine. Sword of Coming Chapter 879. Qin Pingan left the Night Yu sword in the Renyuniyun building, and brought Xiao Mo, and bought some cakes for about 2 people nearby, and bought a pot of wine which cost just 14 taels of silver, not more than one. A lot of money. Xiao Mo followed Qin Pingan to buy drinks and pastries, strolling in the bustling capital city, and said with a smile, "Only those who can take care of the rest of the world can take care of the rest of the world." Lu Daoyu once said that he was the sun's helper. Wonderful. Praise and praise both. Qin Pingan carried the food box and asked with a smile, "Xiao Mo, a friend of Lu Daoist, don't you know the true identity of Lu Qin?" Xiao Mo said, "Lu Daoyu speaks upright. He didn't conceal Bai Yujing's identity as the third head teacher, but I think calling Lu head teacher is too far-sighted, and I have the enthusiasm of Lu Daoyu." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Xiao Mo, you are popular wherever you go." Xiao Mo's smile was habitually somewhat shy. He glanced at the food box in Qin Pingan's hand and asked curiously, "My son, are you particular about this food box and the drinks and food in it?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "There's a lot of attention. The wood for this food box comes from Yuzhang County, the second hometown of the Empress Dowager Dali. What's your appetite? A trip to the capital is not a big deal as long as you don't care about nostalgia. 14 taels of silver is just right. Queen Mother Nanshan's ancestral home is Yuzhang County, and it is rich in fine woods, and has been in short supply over the years. The reason why the Dali imperial court was lax in the past was not how difficult it was to manage this matter. There really needs to be a paper army order. Regardless of the number of people, let alone the rich and powerful gentry on the ground, they are the gods on the mountains, and no one dares to touch the grass and trees in the mountains and forests of Yuzhang County. In the final analysis, it was still that tragic battle, and there were too many dead in the Dali frontier army. If you die, you have to have a coffin. Therefore, the imperial court has only recently begun to really restrain the logging of privately and prepare to seal the forest. The reason is simple. After the war has ended for many years, it has gradually become an excellent wood for the construction of mansions by the dignitaries and the immortals on the mountain. Otherwise, it is the identity of the great pilgrim. The temples and Taoist temples that are constantly being built are sent to the beams and big woods. In short, they have nothing to do with the coffins. Ichi Lane and Cheer Street are just beside the imperial city, so it is very convenient for the distinguished Beijing officials to attend the imperial meeting and the government office on duty. Dali early morning, every day before dawn, the two streets will be full of chariots and horses. I heard that he was a few decades earlier, when Mr. Guan had just entered the staff department, the vehicles were congested on the road, and he often fought for the road. Anyway, almost every one of the Dali officials at that time could be regarded as a military officer. It is a bit similar to the Lubayaman of the Dali companion capital today. Even if the officials did not participate in the battle on the battlefield, the official documents that were handed over every day seemed to have the smell of gunpowder and blood. Chen Pingan took Xiaoma and passed by a gate of the imperial city. It was 7 rooms wide and had a pair of red lacquered and golden nailed door leaves. It was majestic, with a blue and white jade foundation, vermilion high walls, a single eave and mountain-like yellow glazed roof, and 2 inside the door. There is a wild goose wing row house on the side, and a duty room at the end. In the important place of the imperial city, ordinary people never have the opportunity to enter without authorization. Chen Pingan has already handed the innocence card to Xiao Mo, and asked Xiao Mo to hang around his waist and make a look. A military attaché wearing armor walked quickly and recognized the identity of the other party early. The borders of this imperial city gate were set up with a number of magic restrictions, so that the officials in charge of the access control could check and record the identity of the visitor. Some Dali officials and mountain worships that do not need to be obstructed by law, they do not need to enter and leave the imperial city at all. Chen Pingan said, "This is the worship of our Luapa mountain, called the stranger of the alley, the life of life." Soon a staff official walked out of the duty room and spoke to the military attaché. The military attaché clasped his fists and saluted, "Sect Master Chen, after checking, there is no unfamiliar file in the Ministry of Justice, so strangers who hang up their sacrifice cards and walk in Beijing without permission are no longer in line with the court's ritual system." The implication is that Chen Pingan can enter the imperial city, but the entourage around him is unfamiliar, but it is not suitable for him to enter the city. Of course, he wouldn't be stupid to remind the young sword fairy to quickly let Hu Tsong take off the torture card. But this matter, the duty room will definitely record the files carefully. As for the Ministry of Criminal Affairs, there will be no accounting after the event, dare to pursue the blame, or whether to ask Luo Pashan Xingshi about the crime, that is the matter of the criminal ministry. For 100 years, Dali civil and military officials, regardless of their size, have long been accustomed to the official style of clear division of labor and each performing their duties. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "He'll let the criminal department fill it back." The military officer choked for a while and his face was embarrassed. Take a deep breath. The military attaché's eyes became firm, and he reached out to hold the hilt of the knife, shook his head with the sword fairy in Qingshan, and said in a deep voice, "Sect Master Chen, since the ritual is inconsistent, the duty of the official is offended." Chen Pingan turned a blind eye to the military attaché's knife action, and would not embarrass these public servants. He smiled and said, "You can send a letter to the Ministry of Justice in the duty room. I'm here to wait for the news. The promise of the criminal department is the best. If I don't agree, what does it have to do with me entering the city? Do you think you are Lu Jia?" The military attaché heaved a sigh of relief, and asked the sect Master Chen to wait for a while, no more dragged along, turned around and strode back to the duty room, and immediately sent a letter to the Ministry of Justice. The answer I got quickly. The content is also very simple, just 2 words, let go. Only the letter was printed with the official seals of the 2 criminal ministers in addition to the Tongbu Big Seal. This surprised the military attaché. I was full of curiosity about Qin Pinggan's visit to the imperial city. It seems that it is definitely not as simple as going to a government office such as Nangsanfang. Wait until the famous sword fairy in green shirt and the yellow hat and blue shoes gradually drift away. The military attaché returned to the duty room and smiled with the official from the vassal country who was filing the transcript at the moment. This sect Master Qin is a native of Ardali, such a young sword immortal, no worse than the Fengxue temple in the Wei and Jin dynasties. As for sect Master Qin's boxing skills, where can the expert who taught Wu critic Master Pei Qin go? In Xinjiang Mountain, the level of swordsmanship of our Qinshan master, I can't see the depth, but the scene with Xinjiang Mountain enshrined in the mountain, it seems that I have spent a lot of money on buying wine and drinking. The official said with a smile, Old Ma Qin Jianxian is your relative? It's strange, Qin Jianxian doesn't seem to have the surname Ma. The military attaché smiled and said, sour. The officer put down his pen and suddenly said, such a powerful sect master, not only a young sword immortal, but also a master of martial arts. How can I see his disciples in the ancestor hall enshrined in that battle, each punching on the battlefield? Pass the sword but you can't see me? The military attaché was a little bit weak and said angrily, maybe you are busy in retreat. The gods on the mountain can take a nap for several months, not to mention the first-class event of breaking through the 5 realms. Missed that battle too. It's normal. With Xiao Mo, Qin Pinggan walked in the imperial city full of government offices and government workshops. The atmosphere was solemn, and it was a completely different scene from the inner and outer cities. Qin Pinggan turned his head and glanced at the direction of Dadu, the central accompaniment capital. It is estimated that the imitation by Yujing over there has already received a letter from His Majesty Emperor Dallas Feijian. Frightened people? Sorry, on the battlefield that year the 14 old thrones lined up in line, but they couldn't scare me. Qin Pinggan retracted his gaze and said in his heart, Xiao Mo, if there is a Feijian over there, you have to help you block it. Xiao Mo restrained his smile and nodded, you can just ask someone to drink. If Xiao Mo is here he will never bother his wife's retreat. I finally have a chance to make up for 1 or 2. At the Great Wall of Jianqi, fellow Lu Daoist was gloating at the time and gave himself a thumbs up, saying that he dared to hand a sword to the girl Ning in the bright moon and knock her down. Qin Pinggan nodded softly when he heard what Xiao Mo's madam said. Being an offering, it's a bad idea. The 2 sides walked to the gate of a tightly guarded palace. Qin Pinggan and a military commander who guarded the gate said, please give me a briefing. I only see Nan Yen today. Or Lu Jiang from the Lu family of the Middle-earth Yinyang family. Unexpectedly from the shadow of the palace gate, a young monk with a first-class innocence card walked out, waved to the military commander, and signaled that the 2 uninvited guests were handed over to him for reception. Qin Pinggan squinted and said, Senior Lu, it's been a long time since I saw you. The young monk laughed and pretended not to understand, but instead asked, why did Qin Shanju not come with his sword on this trip, because he did not use the sword on purpose? The man in the blue shirt in front of him, the mountain lord of the Luapa mountain, the lord of a sect in the vast world, the martial artist of the end, the last hermit, the closed disciple of the Wenxing line. Of course, the earliest one of all things was the boy who stepped on dog feces and chose to move forward on the covered bridge in the small town and became the swordmaster. But no matter how you look at it, it really can't overlap with the image of the straw shoe boy in Mud Bottle Alley back then. The kiln worker apprentice at that time was just a teenager who would be anxious when he stepped on the Bluestone Road in Taoya Lane, Falu Street, on the way to deliver the letter. I just received a secret letter from the family, saying that Qin Pinggan took a few sword repairmen to travel far away in the wild world. Made the feat of dragging the moon and moved outside to Qingming. What else has been done, unknown. Qin Pinggan said, Senior Lu is just a little older and has been practicing for a long time, but since he is not a swordsman, then don't pretend to be a swordsman. Pause for a moment. Qin Pinggan stared at this ancestor of the Lu family who had been hidden for many years in the Liju cave, and kindly reminded, when you go out, you have to listen to people's advice. The young monk was also not annoyed and said with a smile, the hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi is indeed qualified to say these things. Lu has been taught. This is the end of the matter. There is no need to hide and tangle with regard to one's own identity. Mr. Qin, who is not very young but has a deep city mansion in front of him, is an extremely difficult master to fool. Anyway, the identities of Aunt Feng, the old coachman and the others have been revealed before him. Qin Pingan asked, "Are you going to help lead the way or pick up the sword here?" The fascinating ancestor of the Liu family leaned over, stretched out a palm and said in his heart, "Please. Liu Jiang has set up a banquet and she will personally pick up the dust for Qin Shanju." The three of them walked through the palace gate together. Xiao Mo asked in his heart, "My son, I see this guy is an eye-catcher. Anyway, he is a disciple and grandson of Liu Daoyu, and his realm is not high. He is just a fairyland with a little distance from the ascent. Do you want me to kill him?" Then Xiao Mo added, "At most 3 swords. Yomo is the pinnacle monster who has just left the wild world, and he has really gone to the countryside. My son, I can find a questioning sword first. I will take a good measure but will seriously hurt him so that the opponent will not be killed on the spot. There is no doubt that a swordsman who has chased and killed Yang Ji, provoked by Zhe twice, and has also asked Yuan Xiang and Long Jun about the sword, whether the swordsmanship is high enough." The young monk who was walking slightly in front turned his head, only vaguely aware that something was wrong. He glanced at the temporarily unidentified young man next to Qin Ping and Xiao Mo smiled slightly at the other party. "Nod, as long as the other party nods, you should agree to your own questioning sword. Give another sentence and Xiao Mo can make a sword." Unfortunately, the other party turned his head quickly. Qin Pingan said in his heart, "Don't worry. Some old accounts must be clear. I saw Nanzan who appeared alone. There is also a wine board." Qin Pingan put the food box on the table, gently opened it, took out a jug of wine, and took out 2 pairs of green bamboo chopsticks of ordinary material. "Either hand over the natal porcelain, or it's a little troublesome. I will kill you today. Go find it." Seeing that Nan Yen was about to speak, Qin Pingan just picked up a chopstick from the table and reminded, "You only have a chance to say a word. If there is no definite answer, I will assume that you choose the latter by default." Nan Yen wanted to say something but stopped. It was completely different from the previous meeting at Renyun Yun Tower. She actually did not dare to say a word indiscriminately today. She glanced at her ancestor, who was expressionless. Qin Pingan Ainen quietly waiting for the answer. Sometimes, being unreasonable with unreasonable people is just being reasonable. The old sword fairy used to teach by example and deeds in the city to teach Qin Pingan, who was not a hermit at the time, an extremely simple principle. Beijing Qintian supervisor, the 2 superintendents, had to invite that Mr. Yuan again to help calculate the hexagrams. I have to admit that Yuan Tianfeng is the real, outer world, expert in this matter. Yuan Tianfeng's identity in the Qintianjian is similar to that of a guest on the mountain. Is a special case. Many years ago, a white-clothes xianxia scattered people, conscripted into the dynasty, entered the pilgrimage to meet the Emperor Dali. Yuan Tianfeng was proficient in the matter of looking at pictures, and gave his fortune-telling to future officials such as Old Man Guan, General Su Gaoshan, and Chao Ping, the future central and important officials of the Great Li Temple, and they all fulfilled them one by one. The court of Dali has never been taboo about this matter, and officials are no taboo. Old Man Guan got an excellent saying at that time, saying that fate is first class and one rich and rich. The purple robe and gold belt sit in the high hall, and the predecessors planted trees and descendants to enjoy the shade, and the ancestral hall was filled with jade and gold. It is said that Chao Ping is a frontal bulge like a horn, and there are rhinoceros like a mountain range extending to the jade occipital bone. Saying that Su Gaoshan means that his eyes have red veins, running through his pupils, and when he speaks, there is a red and yellow air lingering at the door. Yuan Tianfeng said, "After that, Lord Qin became a 14th level monk inexplicably. In fact, the hexagram image is very stable." Deputy Ma Jian asked, "Is there a but?" Yuan Tianfeng smiled and said, "But when the opponent does not seem to be in the 14th stage, the hexagram image becomes unpredictable." Yuan Tianfeng smiled and said, "It was the master of Qin Shan who forbeared, now it's your turn to forbear a little." Deputy Ma Jian corrected and said, "It's us, we are Dali, the flower shed of the fire temple." Auntie Feng glanced at the old coachman who had not been by appointment and smiled angrily, "Are you addicted to drinking? When you are a literary sage with more face than heaven?" The old coachman sighed, looked gloomy and stretched out his hand, "I always feel that something is wrong. I haven't had anything for a long time. I'm afraid that I won't be able to drink if I don't come to drink today. Get up, hurry up and get a pot of 100 flour stuffed rice. How many pots can I drink today?" Aunt Feng threw a pot of wine and joked, "You old antiques, if you think things are hanging up, you join hands." Are you afraid that a young man less than half 100 years old will ask you to turn the old account? The old coachman lifted the mud seal, took a big sip on his back, and wiped the corners of his mouth with the back of his hand. Join your hands and turn the old account? I am afraid that the kid will go to the ancestral grave by the kid. This kid will travel far and return to the capital. It's not right, it's very wrong, it's completely changed the individual. It has something to do with the weird realm, but it's not just the realm. Aunt Feng couldn't help but laugh. At this moment I finally know the truth about being kind to others. Qi Jingchun didn't talk less about it back then? Who of you guys listened to it? Why did you know that it was in the beginning? The old coachman sullenly said, You know it is hard to buy a daughter, and you know it is hard to buy a medicine for regret. Looking at the guy who finally admitted to counseling, Aunt Feng stopped teasing him. She glanced at the palace and nodded and said, It's not a trivial matter that the storm is coming. Chao Mansion, a study room. Uncle and nephew are playing against each other. Chao Gingxin looked around, and compared to his father's study, the second uncle was indeed a bit shabby. Not only books, but books. My father's study room is too elegant. There are those with beautiful flowers and leaves, begonias and narcissus. There are also very delicate celadone plum bottles with ice cracks, and a row of golden namu bird cages. The thrush and oriole of the best bird sounds are carefully kept. The bird food tanks in it are all from Chao Gung's heart. The one brought home from Longzhou kiln was very pleasing to my father. As a child of the Chao family, Chao Gingxin dared to go to his grandfather's side and scribble casually in his father's study, but he rarely came to the second uncle's side to hang around since he was a child. Wei is really the patrolling envoy who had to call his second uncle in front of him. He was too harsh. Fortunately, the second uncle will soon lead his troops to the Rishang Ferry in the wild world. Chao Ping, an official worship patrolling envoy, is already the ultimate military minister. There are only 5 people in the entire Dali dynasty, and there are actually only 3 people alive. Wenzhou State Martial Arts Tour Hunting is the pattern of the future Dali. However, the surname of the Xianxia kingdom can be hereditary, but the patrol envoy cannot. It can be seen that the latter is obviously more expensive and difficult to obtain. It's just that for a family the pros and cons of the two are still difficult to distinguish. As for the posthumous post, whether the emperor will chase the Tai Fu or something, compared to the previous 2 titles, they are all imaginary. The second uncle Chao Ping is a Confucian general recognized by the ruling and the opposition. Today is a game of Chupin. Chao Gingxin held a folding fan of Polygonatum japonica in one hand, and kept it close together to open it, crackling. This guy who has been a kiln supervisor for many years has a shiny red wine gourd hanging from his waist. Chao Ping raised his head and glanced at this silly nephew. Chao Gingxin laughed and said, Second uncle, is this upset? Isn't it enough to cultivate the mind? Chao Ping asked, Itchy skin? Chao Gingxin had to sit upright. Don't say it's a father and a mother. The grandfather who has retired for many years is not afraid, but this second uncle who has almost never smiled at home, Chao Gingxin is really afraid. There is no way. Chao Gingxin was really afraid of being beaten by Chao Ping when he was a child. Who made this second uncle official, seniority, knowledgeable, capable, and one thing worth one thing. The problem is that every time Chao Gingxin is beaten he has no brains. Those things that Chao Gingxin thinks will be beaten, the second uncle ignores them, and those things that Chao Gingxin thinks are nothing. As a result, Chao Ping uses his belt every time. It's useless for anyone in the family to intercede. The sound of Lang Langshu and Yi Chixiang's school, and the beating of his son by the father at the gate of Cheer Street are all unusual things. But on the Chao's side, Chao Ping used a belt to draw the heart of his nephew Chao Gung, which is also a must. Both streets and alleys are quite happy to see. Chao Ping asked, When will you marry a wife and have children? Chao Gingxin was big for a while. Seeing that my second uncle wouldn't let myself off on this matter, in a hurry, I had to find a prevarication method casually. I think Zhou Haijing is very good, but I am afraid she will not look down on me. Chao Gingxin instantly knew that something was wrong, and the second uncle took it seriously. Sure enough, Chao Ping nodded, I have a good vision, but Zhou Haijing doesn't like you. So I will give you 3 years. No matter what method you use, you will marry her home. Chao Gung was speechless. As a result, the second uncle came with a more worrying remark. If you are really incapable, you can take a son home. Chao Gung was dull and speechless. The second uncle Chao Ping never joked with anyone. Chao Ping jumped out for no reason. What do you think Qin Pingan is like? Let's talk about it. Chao Gingxin said softly, Second uncle, although we are at home, it's still inappropriate for us to talk about this. The world's first-class Chiuhi's deep mountain and water danger is in the officialdom. On the other side of the battlefield, even the hostile generation of tigers, leopards, snakes, and many famous generals are just real swords and guns. But the ruling and the public criticized, if the flies gather on the human face and mosquitoes lick the skin, they will not disperse. Chao Ping took out a letter from his sleeve and handed it to Chao Gingxin. I can't help but you are suitable and inappropriate. Chao Gingxin quickly scanned the content of the letter. It turned out to be a deal between her second uncle and Qin Pingan. After returning the secret letter to her second uncle, Chao Gingxin coughed a few times. I'm not familiar with it. I'm really unfamiliar. I didn't say a word to him in 1970, and I didn't even have a chance to meet him. I dare not comment casually on such a person who does not show his anger in anger. Qin Pingan does rarely show up in the small town. Every time he travels back to his hometown, he quietly returns to the ancestral house in Nipping Lane, goes to the grave and then goes to Luapa Mountain. He rarely stays in Xuanhuan County. Otherwise, go down the mountain and check the accounts at the 2 shops in Qilong Alley. As for Chao Jengxin's route, there are only a few routes where there is wine to go there. What's more, Chao Jengxin's identity is not suitable for any intersection with Qin Pingan. Chao Ping twisted the pieces from the chess pot with one hand, and held the belt with the other hand. Chao Gung saw that the opportunity was not good and immediately said, however, Lu Dejiangxian and I are very close friends and he is Qin Ping's best friend, so I still understand the general disposition of this young hidden official. Qin Pingan, when he was a teenager, he was unreasonably stable in doing things, but he never harmed anyone. Qin Pingan must be the best candidate for the partner to do business. The second uncle has a unique eye and has nothing to say. Chao Ping saw that his second uncle still seemed unsatisfied, so he had to rack his brains and come up with a saying, discipline brings autumn spirit, and there is spring breeze in doing things. That means you can go up and down the mountain. Chao Ping nodded. The poorest sons have high powers and they live peacefully in the world and act steadily. They will definitely be able to cultivate from Fuhui. Yuan Mansion. Leaving the Yuanying realm of the inn, Jianxiu Yuan Huajing rarely returned to the family, and found Yuan Jingding, who had just returned to Beijing to report on his work. The two sides sit and drink tea. The two of them are regarded as the two most outstanding in the Yuan family of Shangzhou country within 100 years. It's just that the ages of the two sides are very different. Fortunately, there is only one generation difference. Just looking at his appearance, Yuan Jingding, who is middle-aged, is actually a bit older than Yuan Huajing. Yuan Jingding, who served as the governor of the first county of Langzhou, and Chao Gingxin, who has served as a kiln supervisor for many years, have been compared by old officials in the capital. Together with Guan Yiran and Lu Xuanmei, the four are similar in age and family background, and they are all very well mixed now. Among them, Lu Xuanmei will soon follow Chao Ping to the wild battlefield. Relatively speaking, Chao Gingxin is the most heterogeneous, a typical Jingqing elder brother, young and accustomed. Of course, it's even the famous Yannerbad when he was a child. At least half of the credit for the swishes in Ichi Lane and Cheer Street should be attributed to this guy's fanfare, and then profit from it. So Yuan Jingding has always had a dislike for Chao Gingxin. Yuan Huajing said, Jingding, this time the accident is not big. The Langzhou provincial governor Wei Li, who was born in Huangtinghua, is actually in Beijing now, but I believe he will leave Beijing soon and go to Dali to accompany the capital as the attendant of the Ministry of Rights. The vacant position of Langzhou governor has become a sweet pastry for all parties to compete. In the officialdom, there are also some important official positions similar to the battlefield of military strategists. What's more, if you can be an official residence and a state governor for the civil servants, you will be a veritable official in Xinjiang. Recommendation: the book chasing app I'm using recently. App, cache reading, offline reading. Yuan Jing nodded fixedly and asked in confusion, injured? Yuan Huajing smiled and said, you don't need to worry about this and be your official with peace of mind. Then Yuan Huajing said in his heart, the ferry of the feudal Lord Song Mu has arrived in Jianghu. It seems that he changed his mind temporarily and did not enter Beijing. This is the unique advantage of Yuan Huajing as a monk of the earthly branch. Can know many hidden affairs that the children of the Shangzhou kingdom surname would never dare to interfere with. Next to feudal King Song Mu. The maidservant is juvenile, soaring. She is now one of the 4 sea kings. Makushuan Zhengwu Mountain. Including Xingyang Mountain, Yunxia Mountain, and Lialongking Fuss family, these immortal houses on the mountain have always been close to that feudal residence. What's more, those big Li cavalry should be added. And those young and strong officials who accompanied the capital of Lubayaman in Dali. Yuan Jingding said indifferently, I don't recognize the emperor but only recognize the prince. This is a major problem for the country. Yuan Huajing smiled and said, "That's not enough." Yuan Jingding said, "I am going to advise your majesty to move the capital to the south." Yuan Huajing is non-committal. Yuan Jingding asked, "What happened to the Su family in Qingfeng City?" Qingfeng City, the Su family used to be the daughter of the family, and the Yuan family the marriage of sons and daughters. Yuan Huajing smiled and said, "What else can I do? My vitality is badly hurt. I'm lucky enough to mess with that guy." In the alley on the side of Renyuniyun building, a steward from the Zhao family mansion came and said that he was asking Zhao Duaming to go home. Juvenile is after all the son of Zhao's longhouse in Tianshui. Lu Yu reminded, "Go and come back quickly. Don't forget those few words, give more and get more, I don't think too much." Zhao Duanming nodded and said, "It must be proper." Among the surnames of Dali Shang's Huguo, Yuan, Chao and Guan are the undoubted first grades. Then came the Yu family of a queen empress, and the Tianshui Zhao family who was in charge of horse politics in a country, followed by Fufenkia family, Poyang Ma family, Zijiayin family, etc. They are not very different from each other. Each official hilltop and context. Previously, Lu Yu helped Qin Pingan and Tianshui Zhao's patriarch to ask for a picture of Zhao's family instructions. According to the agreement, without mentioning Qin Pingan, Lu Jia only said that he wanted it. Although Tianshui Zhao, who is in charge of many racecourses in Dei, is laughed at as horse dung Zhao. But the so-called Guanga style in the officialdom of Dei is actually Zhao style. Similar to the preface official card of the official Sun Chu of the Hongshu Temple, and the ring stone inscriptions that are used by officials of a country in large and small, they all come from the handwriting of the patriarch of the Zhao family. Lu Pa was on the side of the patriarch of the Zhao family. He had always been a big fan. He occasionally drank there. To the famous second-ranking minister, Lu Pa always took a bite of a little Zhao. Zhao Duanming returned home with the steward and saw the grandfather who was recovering from the illness at home, but it was strange that in the eyes of the young gas trainer, the grandfather had a very strong body, and there was no sign of cold. The old man stood on the steps of the small courtyard, bent over and touched the young man's head and said with regret, "Have you not been struck by lightning recently?" Zhao Duanming rolled his eyes. The old man took Zhao Duanming for a walk to the garden, talking to himself. Said that Tong Yezhou is an indisputable sad book. Fu Yao Zhou is an anger book. As for our Aquarius Island, it is a book of heaven that neither enemy nor us can understand. The young man waited until the old man stopped learning and then asked, "Grandpa, is that basket of calligraphy and painting ready?" "Master is in a hurry." "How come it becomes a basket?" The old man then smiled and said, "The master is not in a hurry. What is your master?" The young man shut up and said, "He is very old in the world, how can he leak the wind?" The old man sighed for no reason. To work with people with the guts, you need to read from a place without words. The young man nodded and said, "Grandpa, this is a very good sentence. I have to write a calligraphy and painting and I will take it away." The old man looked at the energetic boy and laughed. For a twilight old man, every time he falls asleep, he doesn't know if it's a farewell. Probably because of this, the elderly generally sleep very lightly. The morning sun is like a golden deer, gently stepping on the forehead of the sleeper. Queen Yu Mian, today she suddenly went out of the palace to save her relatives, but she didn't mobilize the people, so she went to Yiqi Lane. Dali Song is extremely lenient in such matters. The Ministry of Rights has never closed one eye to this, and never criticizes it at all. The Prince Song Su and Yu Yu are responsible for escorting the Empress. Yu Yu, who is still a little girl, is not too old and is not low in the family. Even if the Empress sees her, she needs to call the girl aunt. Meeting each other anyway, each shouting, Yu Yu would not be polite to the Empress. It's a pity that the Prince Song Su is on her side and likes to pretend to be stupid. Otherwise she would have to call her auntie. The Yu clan of Shangzhou Kingdom has little reputation in the officialdom, but only manages the local official silk and tea affairs. Haha, Chen Jianxian gave Song Su a very high evaluation at the time. The girl laughed so hard she finally held back, imitating the look and tone of the Chen Jianxian, pointed at Song Su and nodded herself. The Jindan Jiangxiu, who is less than 20 years old, is terrifying. The Queen Empress smiled slightly. The Prince Song Su fell on deaf ears. And Xianxia in with a deserted business. It is beautiful and hard-working as well as a few young people. Stay together today and chat casually. The little monk wearing a veiled Zen clothing realized that he had already returned to the translation bureau. Guling seemed to be called to the Dao's Henjiwan. Gayan suddenly gave a shock, her face pale. Go Siyun turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" The earthly branch monk named Susho with a wry smile. I feel the same about why Gayan is like this. In that fight, the white-clothed man only said the word flower bloom, and his colleague Lu Hui was nailed into his body by dozens of long swords, looking like a hedgehog. After, the ghost modified Yen, and was cut into pieces by countless sword lights. In the term of that person, this hand swordsmanship was created and called Pianyue. How to make people who have survived the catastrophe have a lingering fear. A Taoist temple with a very small face in the capital. The main courtyard of Jingshi Dao under the jurisdiction of Dali Chongshu Bureau. Beijing Road is presiding over the meeting. Including Guling genealogy, CI litigation, Qing CI palm print, geography, and Qinggui Lu Si Dao Lu were all present. There is also a middle-aged Taoist priest who habitually squints and smiles. It's not a smiling tiger, but when I was young I liked reading books with lamps, often all night long, which hurt my eyesight. Although I have regained my eyesight, my habits are hard to change. He came from a state of the Dali vassal in his early years, the Xuanhuan kingdom in the southeast of Aquarius Island. He was born in a little-known Taoist temple, but now he is the leader of the Chongshu Bureau. Sun Chu, a young official of the Hongxing Temple, recently had a secret errand to collect the official newspapers of the major government offices. The official rank is not high and it is from the 9th rank, but it is a pure exodus of the imperial examination Jinshi, which is quite important in Honghe Temple. Therefore, in addition to the preface duties, he was able to temporarily lead the Beijing Temple Affairs Department and promote some officials' affair. This is not an ordinary officialdom experience, obviously it is going to be promoted. The Hongshu Siqing just asked Xuanhu privately, "What is the knowledge of that Mr. Chen?" Xuanhu certainly didn't dare to talk nonsense, and could only say that he didn't have much contact with Mr. Chen temporarily. Upper Mountain. Cui Dongshan sits cross-legged, and inside the courtyard is a geomancy map of the northern part of Tonggishao. Chen Lingjun was sitting on the small bench beside him, raising his elbow, rubbing his shoulders for Cui brother. Chen Lingjun hardly saw Cui Dongshan's serious face and eyes. Since the surname Zheng came and left, de Baigo has been this virtue. Is it possible that scholars who like to dress like a big white goose are all such birds? The problem is that the guy whose surname Zheng doesn't know his name doesn't sway when he walks. Chen Lingjun remembered something and asked, "Brother Cui, do you know what Luoyang Myuk is?" Cui Dongshan casually said, "It is a group of wild people in the mountains who have escaped the world. Since ancient times, they have been used to bartering things and don't like money with their hands. However, their reputation on Haoran Mountain is not obvious. The master of Beiping's Baozhai is actually Luoyang Mu. They are of guest origin, but even if these people are of the same origin, as long as they go down the mountain, they don't move around very much." Chen Lingjun asked again, "Then do you know a woman named Qin Bugue?" Cui Dongshan, absent-minded, shook his head, "I haven't heard of it." Chen Lingjun added, "She claims to be a member of the Middle-earth Mizu County." Cui Dongshan thought for a while and asked, "Does she wear a poplar wooden handle knife?" Chen Lingjun was taken aback. "Really? Fucking, could it be that he has run into extremely hard nails again?" Cui Dongshan always stared blankly at the ethereal map and said, "That's right, it's as beautiful as a xianghua holding a poplar blade in hand in the murder city. She and Bai are also people from the same place and they are similar. She is very famous for her age. When she was in the middle of the city, she neither practiced martial arts nor practiced. Many writers, including Bai Yi, wrote poems for her, but I heard that she soon disappeared. It seems that she has entered the mountain to practice the Taoism, which is very suitable for her. There are rumors from the mountain that the pure fist martial arts of the young girl in Zhuhai Dongtian was asked by Mrs. Qingshanshan to teach it for her." Chen Lingjun raised his hand, wiped the sweat on his forehead and said timidly, "But I'm over in Qilong Lane looking at her, it's at best the cultivation level of Yuaning realm. Since that Qin Budu and Haoran is most proud of a senior monk, then she is definitely not a nascent soul monk, the lifespan of nascent soul." Cui Dongshan said, "Don't worry, since she came with Chen Jinrong there is nothing wrong with it. Beipingzi used to be unwelcome. The end of the long mirror of the Song dynasty and the 40-year-old Yupu state of the Fengshua temple in the Wei and Jin dynasties are all regarded as rare events. Nowadays, there are more and more strange people and strangers in other continents, who are actively visiting Aquarius." Chen Lingjun angrily said, "Since that fellow is a busy apprentice, then I am the elder of his uncle generation at any rate. Next time I will see that surname Zheng. See if I don't spill a large bucket of ink on him. How can I help you out?" Sickness. This is what Chen Lingjun said bitterly. "There is no way Cui Dongshan always looks like this. Chen Lingjun actually looks quite uncomfortable. Cui Dongshan originally wanted to remind Chen Lingjun to speak carefully, especially when it comes to the surname Zheng, but he just thought about it again as if to remind no one to remind the guy around him. Haran Xianxia the Wild Peach Pavilion to compete with great feats, it is estimated that he has already lost to this Uncle Chen. Cui Dongshan seemed to be in a better mood and suddenly strangled Chen Lingjun's neck and said with a smile, "Why did your sir take you such a talented genius? The vision is the master's vision. The blessing is my blessing." Chen Lingjun winked at the millet grains. Xiaomi Li immediately raised his hands and raised 2 thumbs at him, jing qing jing qing. Shanjun Weibo walked into the yard from the doorway. Chen Lingjun shook his head and couldn't get rid of the arm of the big white goose. Chen Lingjun's momentum became weak. He laughed and waved, "Hey, this is not Brother Wei, a rare visitor." Weibo was too lazy to talk to Chen Lingjun, holding an official document, and smilingly said, "Good news, the intercontinental ferry wind kite, the land route of Aquarius Island, the Dali court has passed the deliberation, and there is no objection, but a few notes are given. It turns out that Cui Dongshan has designed a complete route from the Xinjia ferry of the Deyuan dynasty in the central part of Beiju Luzhou to the southernmost Kashandu of Tonggishao. Since he wants to be the master of the next sect, he can no longer be as lazy as before. For example, you have to start accepting disciples. Reluctantly, accept that thank you as an anonymous disciple. Among the 9 sword fairy embryos, there are also suitable candidates. In fact, these things were all earlier than Cui Dongshan's expectations at least a year earlier. Moreover, Cui Dongshan's real plan is farther than Tonggishao in the colorful world. Cui Dongshan got up and chatted with Wei Shanjun, and walked to the cliff beside the bamboo building. After Wei Mo left, Cui Dongshan pushed open the door on the first floor of Mr. Bamboo Building, which was both a study and a residence. There is a couplet that my husband loves very much. Is a blue gold word cloud and bat pattern couplet. 3-foot sword in wind and rain outside the mountain, bring the sword down the mountain if something happens. A house of books with flowers and birds in the clouds, worry-free turning over the books, the sages come. Cui Dongshan looked up at the couplet and quickly walked out of the house, closed the door, hugged the back of his head with both hands, jumped on the 6 blue bricks and settled on the last blue brick. The white-clothed boy smiled and said, "He who moves my heartstrings, Mingyue beauty, falling snow jianghuang." Sword of Coming Chapter 880. This private banquet, which is called the Blessing of Wind and Dust, is set in a flower garden, surrounded by beautiful flowers, fragrant and refreshing. A small round table made of white jade was brought in early, and Qin Pingan and the Queen Mother Dali sat opposite each other. A dazzling wooden box was placed on the table. Nandan was born in Yuzhang County. At first glance, he could see that it was a food box made of wood from his hometown. A pot of wine, 2 pairs of green bamboo chopsticks, and a little embellished cheap pastry, served as a side dish. Seeing Nan Yen frowned, "Why the mud legs of a small alley when a mountain man liked to play mystery so much?" The young monk, whose identity was still hazy, sat between the two. It's like a long-standing dispute between the rivers and lakes. Feng Shui takes turns. Now the disadvantaged party, who is at the disadvantage, dares not to tear his skin. He is really immortal with the other party, and he does not want to lose his face too much, so he must find one for himself. At the bottom of the steps, I had to invite a well-known hotel to help slow the cheeks, and mediate in the middle. As for the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes, even if there is a free place, he did not take a seat. Instead, he stood behind Qin Pingan, folded his hands on his abdomen, smiling. Qin Pingan twisted out a lantern talisman from his sleeve. It was made of ordinary material. He gently twisted the Huangshi talisman with his 2 fingers, and then placed it on the food box. The lantern talisman began to burn slowly, reminding the Queen Mother to be dumb. Time is limited. Nan Yen raised her brows and squinted those peach eyes. Suddenly rich and wealthy, forgetting about it, it's nothing more than shaking the majesty in the Yunyan Tower. After all, it is the place where Cui Guosher studied, but a local monk of Dali, the genealogical monk and pure warrior of the entire hill, all need to be recorded in the Song Court. How dare you, are you still so aggressive in this Dali palace? She was about to say something to her ancestor Lu. Unexpectedly, the other party had noticed Nan Yan's intentions, and immediately shook her head, and with her eyes she beckoned her not to act so recklessly. Once the other party believes that Yunnan Zan gave the answer, what else can both parties talk about? Qin Pingan, this young man is so good at showing the enemy to weaken, just like now, just looking at it is just a golden core realm trainer? Takashi from far travel territory? It's a lie. Moreover, the previous 14 realm weather was too evil and the path was not right. Therefore, if Nanzan talks to her heart, it is very likely that she will be overheard. Today, Qin Pingan visited Dei Miyagi on this trip, naming Taoist surname to see the Queen Mother Nanzhan, which obviously exhausted his patience. Qin Pingan started to close his eyes and calm his mind. The young monk smiled and said, "Introduce myself, the last name is Lu, and the end is attached to the tail. Lu Jiang and Lu Tai, I both came from the Lu family house." The self-reported ancestor of the Lu family continued. As the Lord Qin said on the road when he came, Lu has indeed cultivated Taoism in the Lizhu cave for many years. It is better than the early years of Taoism in the family, so you and I can count half a fellow countryman. Nanyan was slightly determined. The existence of this ancestor of the Lu family is not only a deterrent from that behemoth family, she must first be Lu Jiang from the Lu family clan, and then the southern hairpin of Yuzhang County in Dei, but Lu Wei is also her biggest backbone today. The backer is located. Although Lu Wei is not the patriarch of the Lu family of Middle-earth, he is a great monk of the Yin-Yang family who can ascend to the ascendant within half a step. He has a deep and shallow cultivation and a high level of lethality. In fact, he is not attacking magic weapons and magical powers, but taking the lead. If you can choose by yourself, Nanyan certainly doesn't want to be involved in the Lu family at all, because you can link the puppets, life and death are involuntary. Nanyan hoped that she was just a daughter of the Nan clan in Yuzhang County. She had some monastic qualifications. She married a good man and gave birth to 2 good sons. Day by day, the daughter-in-law became a woman-in-law. Finally, she managed to end up with the disappearance of the embroidered tiger. She managed to endure 2 sons, an emperor and a vassal, and she also took advantage of the trend from the lowbrow and pleasing Queen Dali to become an enactment. The Empress Dowager of Iji was able to participate in the affairs of Dali to a certain extent, not like the daughter-in-law who was born to be fox and charming. The so-called queen status is just to talk to some imperial wives and talk about the parents' shortcomings. Qin Pingan opened his eyes and asked, "The Confucian Lu Yi, a monk from the earthly branch of Dali, is also the direct son of your Middle-earth Lu clan's Qingzhou?" Lu Wei smiled slightly. He is indeed the master of a sect who made his own from scratch. His thoughts are like flying birds, and he is habitually thinking that ordinary people can't think of it. Ordinary people, even if they know the path of the fortune of Qin Shanzhu, they may pay more attention to his fairy family opportunities. However, Lu Wei is too familiar with the customs, the big and small inside stories of the Lizhu cave, and he knows how difficult it is for an orphan with no support and no roots to get to this point. Lu Wei, the peacemaker today, should be extremely sincere without any concealment, shook his head and said, "Lu Hui, that child is just a son of the next one. He is not the same as the Empress Dowager. He still doesn't know his origin." Qin Pingan said, "If I were the fisherman in Linyuan, I would have to recite an old saying several times a day, and the skynet would be sparse and not leaking." Lu Wei nodded and said, "Golden and jade good words, I think so." Previously, he drove Nan Yen to the alley to find the old coachman of Qin Pingan. The key bet was on Ma Kuxuan Xinghua Lane, who later went to Jianghu Mountain to practice. And the Aunt Feng, although she and the old coachman were both from ancient gods, she had no standpoint. No one should be guilty and she had a good relationship. Lu Wei and the Fulong scholar who has not yet appeared on Qin Pingan's side, they once bet on the Dali Song family, who was only a vassal of the Lu family at the time. While Lu Wei was dormant in the sky in Lizhu Cave, his most proud handwriting was not behind the scenes to help the first emperor of Song dynasty in Dei, planning the site selection of the old 5 mountains of Dei, but earlier, Lu Wei had cultivated the 2 by himself. A young man from Lizhu Cave, carefully cultivated and taught them knowledge. Later, these 2 people became the most famous ministers of Zhongxing in the history of the Song family. Chao Gan and Yuan Xian, a master of art and a military, the mainstay of the country, helped Dali survive the most precarious years of trouble, making it still Lu at the time. Dali, a vassal country, was spared the fate of being completely annexed by the Lu dynasty. However, in order to hide the traces, Lu Wei asked Aunt Feng to act, and she sent the 2 out of Lizhu Cave. The 2 gate gods of Yuan and Chao were posted on the portals of Izhou, which allowed Lu Wei to divide the mountains, waters, and fortunes. The avenue was of great benefit, and there was finally a trace of the bottleneck loosening in the fairyland. Before in the Huoshan temple, Aunt Feng teased the old coachman. It was really impossible. To protect yourself, it is better to shake someone's roots and feet. What Aunt Feng said was Lu Wei. The old coachman was still quite hard-spirited, and he didn't want to fall on the mud-legged side of Qin Pingan, who had never looked at him and did not do so. But the bigger reason is that the old coachman has always believed that the 4 difficult ghosts on the mountain together are no more than a fortune-telling. Seeing the two chatting peacefully, Nan Yen began to feel a little uneasy. Will you be regarded as an abandoned son by the ancestors of the Lu family? Or will it be used as a bargaining chip for a deal? Lu Wei suddenly shifted his vision, looked at the weird follower behind Qin Pingan, and asked with a smile, Qin Shanzhu, this unfamiliar Taoist fellow with the pseudonym, doesn't seem to be our Howrah native? A Qi practitioner who can't even see the origin of the avenue and the depth of his cultivation, at least he started in the fairyland. Just when he was leading the way, Lu Wei quietly evolved and deduced it, but it was a pity that there was no trace of it. Lu Wei didn't dare to do too much calculations, worried that he might cause unnecessary trouble for himself. Only in the dark, Lu Wei always felt that this unfamiliar of unknown origin, behind that gentle and frugal smiling face, hides a great murderous intent. Qin Pingan introduced, older Lu is on the mountain with respect and years of cultivating Taoism. Just call him Xiaoma. The monk speaks for his fame and life, and each has his own particulars. As for where Xiaoma came from and how he cultivated Taoism. At this point, Xiao Mo, a wandering mountain in wild repair, doesn't talk about teacher inheritance. Lu Wei smiled. He could only make useless guesses with a trace of wild aura on his opponent, or maybe someone in the Great Wall of Sword Qi was hiding in the barbarian. The old sword fairy who has been in the wasteland for many years has infiltrated too much foreign luck in the wild world. Either simply is a surrender to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, monster monk, similar to that old deaf child. And the great monks of the monster race who soared across the world and the immortal realms are almost well known on the top of the mountain, such as the faintly named Taishishingguo O Ting, and the younger brother Lu Daochun of Zhengjuzhong in Baidi City, but it seems that now has been renamed Lu Qiqing. Lu Wei didn't think any of them fit the unfamiliar image before him. It is important to know that Lu Wei is one of the world's top champions. The so-called landscape barriers of ordinary immortals do not have any effect in Lu Wei's eyes. Since Qin Pingan has served as the last hermit for many years in public and private, there should indeed be such a master of swordsmanship by his side who can live and die. The sun and the moon are all in the same way. Xiao Mo smiled kindly with a warm voice and said in the most authentic Zhongtu Shenzhou dialect, So Mr. Lu doesn't have to leave a hometown, he just needs to treat me as a junior on the road of spiritual practice. Lu Wei looked at Qin Pingan and said with emotion, Sage, the substitute of heaven and earth. Self-carefully raised his wine glass, Lu Wei drank it in one gulp. The hero, the manifestation of the stars. Qin Ping placed a deaf ear, just glanced at the slowly burning lamp talisman, and suddenly twisted a mountain incense from his sleeve with 2 fingers. It was the Yunxia incense bought from the Yunxia mountain Kai Jinjian not long ago. Lightly knocked the mountain incense on the stone table like setting up a stick of incense in the incense burner, more like, is reminding this senior Lu who has been dormant in the sky of Liju Cave for many years, that what you call a half-hometown, there is so much incense affection between the two sides. Next, whether Lu Wei was prepared to act with reason and affection, or talk nonsense solemnly, playing some mysterious numerology, anyway there was only a stick of incense. As soon as the time comes, don't let me see your face like Senior Lu. Otherwise, it is equivalent to a questioning sword. Lu Wei looked calm and unconcerned. The Qi cultivation skills of the old gods are not without profound knowledge. Nan Yen was so annoyed that her pretty face flushed slightly, her eyes rounded as if the curse had already reached her mouth, and she almost blurted out. She was actually a little bit happy in her heart. If she could pull the entire Lu clan of Middle-earth into the water, she would really not believe in this Lord Qinshan, and she would dare to be arrogant. In her opinion, those with vested interests in the world will definitely protect their vested interests to the death. This is a simple truth. All amulets are at the same time shackles. The more identities and titles of Qin Pingan, according to common sense, the less he dared to easily die with someone. Lu Wei said, the Lu family is really too big and the branches are lush. Not to mention that the family house is different from the other houses on the main road, and there are conflicts of interests. We only say that there are constant differences within our family house, so it will be called by the outside world. It's the Lu family ancestral hall discussion, and it must be the most haggard for people. Lu Wei's sentence, the first half of the sentence is really not a big deal, and the second half is not against one's heart. The school of one surname of the Lu clan in the Middle Earth occupies half of the Yin and Yang family. A family in its heyday had a soaring 3 immortals. If it weren't for the Zhou Zi who saw the dragon but didn't see the end, Lu's status in the Howrah world would be even higher. Zhou Zi talks about the sky, Lu Shi talks about the earth. If you give an example, it is Li Tuanjing in Fenglai Garden in Aquarius in the previous 200 years, a man who crushed all the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain. When the sun, moon and stars pull the sky, mountains and rivers drive the earth's air, the heavens and the earth's yin and yang are in harmony, the two airs are entangled and all things breed in it. The image of the heavens, the saints choose it, it is the way of heaven and the you is the real way. Therefore, the science of geomancy is the first-class study of heaven and earth in the world. The two airs of heaven and earth are separated by wind and water. It is called feng shui. It is also the best in geosciences. In fact, Lu's geomancy and magnanimous man's ability to look up at the sky and collect wind and water is not inferior. What's more, the Lu family of the Yin-Yang family also has an extremely hidden duty, responsible for assisting Fengdu, making people live in the sun, darkening the ghost place and ultimately the strange road. Both sides do not commit each other. Lu Wei's face has a slightly regretful look. So there are many things in the eyes of outsiders, our Lu family has done very inexplicably, and often contradicts ourselves. For example, in the case of Emperor Dali, it seems to me that the son of the Lu family who was beside him was too hastily, and this person's reconstruction of a covered bridge on a stone arch bridge is even more against the law of nature and against human relationships. At the beginning, the Yin-Yang family monk from the Middle-earth Shenzhou on the surface, was in the same line of the Mo family branch where the ranger Su Wei was located, and together helped the Dali dynasty imitate by Yujing. The first emperor Dali practiced secretly, violating the rules set by the Confucian temple and becoming an immortal, and he almost became a puppet. After the incident was revealed, the Yin-Yang monk tried to escape and was killed by the feudal lord Song Changjing in the capital. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It seems that there is something missing? The melons are ripe and they must be put into the basket, otherwise they will rot in the ground? So that person is making evil on his own initiative. Are you cleaning up the mess or making up for it? This is the truth, right? This way of clearing the relationship has taught me." Reaching out his sleeves, a finger pressed against a green bamboo chopsticks on the table, and gently slid towards the edge of the table. The chopsticks hung slightly in the air. Then Qin Pingan stopped and sneered, "It was all wrong at the time afterwards. It's always reasonable to look at it again. You are so good at choosing dishes, so why don't you become a cook?" Lu Wei glanced at the chopsticks, his eyelids trembled. In an instant, just such an action made Lu Wei's heartstrings tense. This is by no means a jade pure realm sword repair. The problem is that according to the secret family letter, Qin Pingan has returned the 14 realms of Dao Fa, and after traveling back to the city's head, he seemed to be injured. Nan Yen is gnashing his teeth as he deserves to be Lu Jiang. Lu Wei sighed, as long as Qin Shanzhu agrees to a trivial matter, Lu Wei can surrender the fragments and return the property to the original owner. Qin Pingan was expressionless, he glanced at the Nanzhan who was not skilled enough in acting, then squinted at Lu Wei and said indifferently, "Listen to it, are you planning to take it all out today?" Qin Pingan knew exactly what the Lu clan's calculations were made. He had been in the capital before and he had already seen the fire. Don't forget who Qin Pingan borrowed Dao Fa, and he wore the lotus crown of Lu Qin on his head. With you Lu Wei, would you like to be like Zhou Zi? Qin Pingan shook his head. Let's take care of things one shoulder. Can you afford Lu Wei? You can't walk around if you can't eat. Can you hold on to Lu clan? No matter how good Lu Wei's self-cultivation is, his face is a little unnatural when he hears this. It was mainly this sentence which provoked one of the biggest heart diseases in Lu Wei's life. In Lizhu Cave he was forced to die by a scholar. Lu Wei is obviously still unwilling to give up. Whether it is the Dai dynasty or Aquarius Island, Lu is an outsider after all, just a passerby, but Qin Shanzhu is not. If because of a trivial matter that could have mutually benefited, a totally unnecessary quarrel of spirits would cause violent wars, mountains and rivers torn apart and lives are disastrous? Moreover, the war between the two worlds is about to break out, and the situation in Dali will change. Aquarius Chao changed accordingly. Another accident in Ao Ping Chao moved his whole body. There are things, and some people say that we have a book on the mirror, the spring is full of water and the fish walks on the sidewalk. In the fall of autumn, there are soldiers to rise from the country, and the pedestrian walks through the birds. The consequences are disastrous. Does Lord Qin want to turn the Aquarius Island, which has no foreign troubles, into the second Tongya Island? Lu Wei looked sincere and said with emotion, "The one who has made a fortune for Aquarius Island is the two senior brothers of Qin Shanzhu." Staring at the young man in front of him, Lu Wei solemnly said, The one who continues incense for the Great Wall of Sword Chi is Qin Pingan of the Last Hermit. Lu Wei finally took care of himself and shook his head. If you are in a good situation, why should you fail? If you have a good future, why bother to ruin it? Qin Pingan asked, looking at your posture, you seem to be the new national teacher of Dali. Lu Wei laughed blankly, don't dare. Qin Pingan smiled and said, did I agree? Lu Wei was speechless. At this moment Lu Wei was in a daze. The young green shirt guest in front of me is like two people overlapping at the same time. Xiao Mo immediately echoed, old immortal Lu has never asked about this, and the son has never agreed. Qin Pingan leaned forward a little bit and actually stretched out his two fingers, directly extinguishing the mountain incense standing on the table. So in an instant, there was a cyan sword light falling straight down. Nan Yin closes her eyes almost instinctively. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a golden talisman that had been chopped in half floating on the ground at the place of the ancestor of the Lu family. At the same time, Nan Yin found that the cyan chopsticks were missing on the table next to Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan did not have the slightest surprise. It is one of the great charms created by the Lu clan in the Middle Earth. It is called Truth Talisman, also known as Scorpion Talisman. Compared with the puppet talisman along the mountain talisman, it is better to replace the death talisman, because the monks sacrifice this talisman, almost the same as the real body, can only fall for one level. But there are two restrictions. One is the number of talisman, which will not exceed 3 at the same time, and the distance between the real body of the monk and the talisman will not be too far. With Louis's Fairyland cultivation base, it is not far away. After holding one hand, Xiao Mo shook his wrist lightly, and condensed a sharp long sword with his sword aura. When he looked around, he couldn't help but exclaim from the bottom of his heart, the young man this sword has gotten out of his swordsmanship. It's almost impossible. This sentence is Xiao Mo's sincere words. All the techniques that can break the limits of the realm, get a short distance. Xiao Mo find out Lu Wei's real body. Qin Pingan waved his hand and grabbed the two-divided rune in his hand. It was a rune made of gold, fine copper and melted and refined, imitating a certain natural magical power of the ancient gods. Xiao Mo nodded, and with a twist of his wrist, the long sword instantly turned into tens of thousands of white silk threads, which was fleeting, like spreading an invisible net across the entire capital city. Nan Yin only saw the young follower next to Qin Pingan, still smiling. At this moment, it was like listening with vertical ears. After noticing her sight, the little Mo nodded at her politely. Nan Yin, who made his back chill, got goosebumps. Qin Pingan put the two halves of the talisman together on the table. Taking advantage of the aura of Fudan hadn't disappeared, he looked down carefully, not forgetting to remind the Queen Mother, drinking can be courageous. Dali capital was everywhere, and a talisman was lit up in succession, fleeing in 4 directions as fast as a rainbow. Looks like a real body with 3 talismans. The order of appearance is in order, and the speed of escape varies, all of which are blindfolds. Xiao Mo didn't pay any attention. Instead, he squatted down, bent his fingers, tapped the ground and said with a smile, come out. 5 fingers like a hook, one suddenly pulled, and then Lu Wei's real body was grabbed by the neck and lifted out of the ground. The fighting skills of these gods and gods of the Yin and Yang family are really unhelpful. The sound of the heartstrings is so loud that it falls in the ears of Xiao Mo, just like thunder. The key is that this guy is fortunate to have used the method of escape from the ground, and it's a joke. Otherwise, I am afraid that it will take a few blinks of an eye to find out the real body of this senior Lu. Xiao Mo carried an old fairy, walked slowly, walked to the former position of the ladder, released his hand and gently put down the old predecessor. Standing behind Lu Wei, Xiao Mo pressed the other's shoulders with both hands and complained, my son didn't let you go, seniors should not make their own decisions. Let's not take this as an example. Xiao Mo moved his fingers together again and gently rotated it. The 4 talismans which had been thousands of miles away, were all pulled back into his hands as if they were being dragged by Xiao Mo. Glancing at the sun, Qin Pingan allowed the talisman on the table to dissipate on its own, raised his head and shook his head with a smile. No relatives and no reason, and it's not for New Year's holidays. Just forget it. Xiao Mo had to bend down and lift up one sleeve of the old fairy, and threw the 4 talisman in. If the sun is not present, Xiao Mo will let Lu Wei eat it all back. Lu Wei said with a stern face, it's a life-sustaining lamp in Lu's ancestral hall to die. From now on, I hope Xianxia can do it for himself. In fact, in the small world of this ancestor of the Lu family, thousands of sword auras raged in it. Nanyan oozes fine sweat from his forehead. Qin Pingan smiled, holding the remaining chopsticks in his left hand, and then extending a right palm, gently pressing his 5 fingers under the tabletop, suddenly holding it up, flipping the tabletop in the air, and then stretched out his hand to hold it. The food box and pastries fell on the ground, the hip flask was broken, and the wine was spilled on the ground. Qin Pingan's move of lifting the table shocked Nanyan. At this moment, her face was pale and she was no longer a fake. Qin Pingan asked, "The mountains and rivers are broken? You too, do you overestimate yourself?" Looking at the Queen Mother who was finally no longer acting on the opposite side, Qin Pingan said, "Actually, you are not difficult at all. What is really difficult is your 2 sons who have exchanged names." His sight shifted. Staring at the tail of the landing, Qin Pingan asked, "Do you really want to die once? Think about it again, but when you speak, remember to speak well." Nanyan was silent. Lu Wei is also. The reason for today's banquet is that they had a rigorous deduction and made a long list of lists. The patrol hunter Chao Ping, Guan Yiran, Lu Xuanmei, Yuan Huajing, a son of the Yuan family, is also an earthly branch monk. Yu Mian, Nanzan's daughter-in-law, and Yu Yes, insecure girl. Lu Yu, Zhao Duanming, Zhao clan, and Tianshui. Dallas military, may not recognize the close disciple of Wensheng's line, and the sword fairy mountain master of Luapa Mountain, but recognize that hidden official title. Very recognizable. Because both sides are people who crawled out of the dead. There is a simpler truth. Without the blockage and delay of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, more people would die from Dali Iron Cavalry. Even if the big wood of Yuzhang County is cut down to make a coffin, it is not enough. In addition, when Qin Pingan first arrived in the capital, he once went out of the city to lead the heroes of the battlefield back home. The Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Criminal Affairs. Even if you don't say anything, you have a steelyard in your heart. Is it that Qin Jianxian is a polite hypocrite? In order to win the favor of the 2 parts of Dali? From officialdom to the battlefield, Dali has sincerely admired the knowledge of utility. What's more, there is also the Piyun Mountain, which is so good as to wear a pair of trousers with Luapa Mountain. Weibo, the monarch of Beiyue Mountain. Fan Junmao, the monarch of Nanyue Mountain, was born in the old Longqing Sun family. Qin Tianfeng's Yuan Tianfeng, using his own way, is tantamount to expressing his attitude. And that scheming Hongia Saiking is close friends with Mr. Guan of the staff, and both of them were scholars at the old Mountain Cliff Academy of Dei. The military officer on duty at the gate of the imperial city, who was in charge of blocking the road, came from the Ma family of Poyang, the Pillar Country. Although he is not a big figure of the Ma family, his attitude towards the young sword fairy is to a large extent the Poyang Ma family's attitude towards Luapa Mountain. The female formation master of the earthly branch, Han Zhoujin, although from the blessed land of Qingtan under the jurisdiction of the gods. But the backing of Han Zhoujin is Zizoyan's family. Zizoyan's family leans a lot of incense connections and treasures on Han Zijin's body. The middle-aged Taoist priest in the Chongshu Bureau of Dali capital is from the Baiyun Temple of Qingyuan country. Lu Qingfeng, the Shangshu of the Ministry of Rights of the capital. Wei Liang. Book slips Lake Zhenjingzong, Lu Laoqing, Lu Jimao, Li Fuyu. Fengshua Temple. Fenglei Garden. In fact, there are even more temple figures, immortal teachers on the mountain and warriors on the battlefield, who are engulfed by this big net spreading from the Luapa Mountain. If you add the other continents, the Middle-earth Confucian Temple and the colorful world of Ascension City, then the size of the chessboard and the number of chess pieces will only be even more exaggerated. In fact, the table in front of Lu Wei and Nanyan is a chess game that covers the entire Dali Song family. The person who plays chess. Qingshan sits hidden. At this moment, Nanzan had an illusion inexplicably. The young man opposite seemed to be saying that from today onwards, I am the national teacher of Dei. Sword of Coming Chapter 881. Taihui Jianzong Pian Ranfeng. The cultivator here is now only the white head. Because Bai Shou is already a sword repairer in the Golden Core realm, and Lu Jinglong is also the suzerain, he moved to the Zushan side, so Taihui Jianzong held a simple peak opening ceremony, and Pianran Peak became Baisha's cultivation. Place. As long as the white head is willing, he can actually start accepting disciples. It's just that the white head has been listless every day. Every time he practiced his sword, he sat in a daze on the bamboo chair. He actually doesn't like to drink and is not used to it. So every time I carry a hip flask, I can't finish it every time. Previously, I went down the mountain to practice with a few Zongmen Jianxiu, went to Lanfang country, and fought a fight at a border called Taezguan. A small group of wild monster monks flew there to commit crimes. Siege because the realm of the savage monks is not high, there is no suspense about the outcome. The few monks of the sect, including Taihui Jianzong, had almost no damage and few injuries. It's just that there was another encounter on a narrow road that was unexpected for both the enemy and us. It was a golden core monster monk who was also good at hiding. Somehow he failed to escape back to the barren world through the sea but gave it to him. I slipped to Luzhou and Beiju and stayed silent for a few years, just to break the border and become the nascent soul. It actually directly harmed dozens of people of a small sect of Jianghu. The methods were vicious and concealed, and they were all refined into Walking Dead, if not relying on the keen sense of the assassin's birth. Baisho was aware of a clue, maybe he would miss this monster race. In a dangerous fight, the Whitehead made the most effort, and it was he who killed the enemy with a single blow, successfully killed the enemy, cut off the head, and flew the sword to shatter the golden core that was repaired by the ghost, but a nephew of the other peak of the Zongman. Although the Dragon Gate swordsman was a generation lower than the Baisho, he was actually much older than the Baisho, but he was seriously injured in the battle. He was hit by a magic trick by the monster cultivator. The hopeful sword repair of the immortal, completely hopeless. After Baisho returned to Pianran Peak, he who was already taciturn became more silent. Even if the surname Lu and the nephew of the teacher have come to the mountain to persuade, but Baisho's heart is not good. Especially when the nephew of the teacher he took the initiative to come to Pianran Peak, to find the teacher Uncle Baisho to drink. To be honest, it's okay, Uncle Bai doesn't have to worry about it. When he said these words, Jianxiu who fell into the realm had sincere eyes and a smile on his face. At the end he said, if you really want to feel sorry then help count his realm together. If you are all white in the future, if there is no Yupu state, then it is impossible to say, when he comes to Pianranfing every day to block the door and curse the street. At this moment, Baisho embraces the back of his head with his hands and sits on the small bamboo chair. How can he not care? How can it be okay? The wine is not good. My heart is more uncomfortable. And the open-mindedness of that sword repair made Baisho the most uncomfortable. Having fought on the Great Wall of Jianxi for many years, I have never fallen into a state. Why did he return to his hometown being in such a small place? It happened. And just under his Whitehead's eyelids, the opponent is just a beast with a bottleneck in the Golden Core realm, and he is in the same realm with him, and my Whitehead is still a sword repairer. On the previous trip down the mountain to kill the demon, on the way to Taezquan, one day the sword repair was at the dinner table. Hearing Baisho said that he and Qin Pingan were brothers and brothers, he killed him and said that unless the hermit visits Pianranfing next time, you can really help introduce one or two, let him talk to the young hermit, just believe it. At that time, Baisho patted his chest and packed the ticket, which was a trivial matter. The surname Lu was even more excessive. The second time I came to Pianranfing, the guy who split his head and covered his face directly gave himself a serious sentence, saying that if you don't even understand this, it means that you are not the real Taihui sword sect. Disciple, not a sword repair. The surnamed Lu left after speaking assholes. The Whitehead didn't say anything, reasoned or something. How could he say that, nerd master? Baisho rubbed his face vigorously, sighed heavily, got up from the chair and began to punch randomly. Suddenly stood still, with close together, pointed forward, imagined that there was a black charcoal standing not far away and laughed. Hey! The black charcoal, listen carefully, if you don't hold back the uncle will be out fist. Baisho changed his fingers to his palms, swaying from side to side as if slapped in the face. Be reasonable with you, don't you? You are suffering now, right? Remember it later and meet your uncle Baisho, show respect. In the air just 1 mile away from Pianran Peak, a group of people hovered in the wind, but someone used a blindfold. The white-haired boy looked admiringly on his face and exclaimed sincerely, "It's a man. Wait a moment, I have to toast this hero with a glass of wine." The premise is that this guy can still drink. Lu Jinglong couldn't laugh or cry, but he didn't remind the disciple. Pei Qian was expressionless and twitched at the corner of his mouth. Millet Grain scratched his face and looked at Pei Qian carefully. It seemed that he had a chance to save it. Qin Pingan nodded and smiled. It really is a good boxing technique. The Whitehead twisted his waist and drove into the air. He thought he kicked out a leg extremely chicly. After landing, he patted his palms. Don't send it. Then a group of people floated to the ground and appeared. The Whitehead closed his eyes, opened his eyes again, closed and opened again. Okay, I can run away. Without a word, with a touch of his finger, the long sword on the wall inside the house suddenly unsheathed. The Whitehead stepped on the long sword, and the sword hurriedly left Pianran Peak. Pei Qian glanced at Master. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Remember the past. Pei Qian glanced at Lu Jinglong again and the latter smiled and said, "Just pay attention to your measure." Pei Qian took off the bookcase and handed the hiking stick to the millet grains. His figure disappeared in a flash as fast as thunder, and he immediately caught up with Yujian's white head. Bai Shou Mao was full of strong swords, and the lady next to him was always calm and followed by. Bai Shou had no choice but to smile and say, "What a coincidence. Come as a guest." Pei Qian was just standing side by side with the white head, without speaking, with a smile on his face like a golden sign, and then glanced sideways. The white head, who is not afraid of the sky, is the most afraid of Pei Qian's expression in this life. The white head began to break the jar. "I want fight back. Pei Qian is a punch." The white head and the long sword at his feet landed straight together. The corners of his mouth twitched and the whole body was trembling. Most of his body was in the mud in the mountains. He didn't faint, but it hurts. It's better to sleep and then wake up. The cruel black coal has left Pianran Peak. Pei Qian stood aside and asked, "What should I do next? Do you want to ask me 3 strokes?" Bai Shou trembled. "1 move is enough." Pei Qian raised his palm and then turned his wrist, pulling the whole white head out of the ground and pushing it back 2 steps. The white head shook and his head was dizzy. Install, continue to install. Pei Qian's previous punch with skillful energy did not make Bai Shou so drunk. She stomped gently, the long sword jumped out in an instant. Pei Qian waved her hand again, the long sword instantly swept back to the Pianran Peak thatched house, and returned to the scabbard in an arc. The white head seemed to wake up from alcohol in an instant, and he laughed and said, "Pei Qian, why did you come to Pianran Peak without saying hello?" Pei Qian laughed and said, "I'm afraid of being beaten." The white head complained, "What annoyance, we say whoever is with whom we are in the same generation." Pei Qian asked, "Go back with Yufeng?" The white head said, "Let me take it easy. I have lost a lot of face today and now I will be laughed at by Brother Qin. It's best to wait until he gets back there. Qin Pingon has already drunk with the surnamed Lu." The two walked towards Pianran Peak. Pei Qian was silent for a moment and said, "I heard about the Tiezguan and Lanfangguo side." Bai Shou just hummed and then remained silent. Pei Qian continued, "There are some things that cannot be remedied. In fact, the only thing you can do in the future is to practice the sword well and try not to make the same mistakes. If you are willing to feel guilty, continue to feel guilty. It is not a bad thing. It is better than nothing. Don't take it seriously when you turn your head, but don't delay practicing swords. Whether it's martial arts or swordsmanship, as long as your heart falls, everything will stop." The white head still hummed, but in the eyes of the young Jianxiu, some of the former look was restored. Pei Qian said, "It's just a golden pill. I'm ashamed to be Mr. Liu's disciple, and still have a whole generation who will be like you." In fact, at this age, the white head has already become the golden core sword repair. Even in the northern Juluzhou where sword repair is the most common, he is considered a well-deserved genius. Bai Shou walked sideways and said with a smile on his hippie face, "Yo, Grandmaster Pei has a good tone." Pei Qian just looked ahead and whispered, "I have a few pounds of punches, so I'll speak a few pounds of words. If you don't like to listen, don't listen." Mr. Liu is one of Master's best friends, and Bai Shou is also Mr. Liu's pioneering disciple. Therefore, Pei Qian hopes that Bai Shou can ascend on the way of Kendo. The higher the better, one day he can stand between Master and Mr. Liu. Around. Otherwise, if he was an outsider, Pei Qian would never say a word. Bai Shou stared at the strange Pei Qian in front of him in a daze. He turned around and nodded, "It must be so." Pei Qian said suddenly, "You slapped 8 times before, just as you owed me 7 punches. The white head wailed, "Bai Qian, when can you correct the stinky problem of bookkeeping?" Pei Qian sneered, "Okay. 8 punches." The white head was desperate. Pei Qian hesitated for a moment and still said, "Bai Shou, you can't let Mr. Liu down because not anyone can be like you and me, so lucky to meet such a good master." Bai Shou smiled and said, I know, well, there is one more person around me who likes to reason." Pei Qian nodded, 9 punches. Bai Shou planned to return to Pianran Peak, so he engraved the 8-character motto on the table. When I arrived at the Pianran Peak thatched cottage, Bai Shou couldn't stand it anymore. The brothers Lu and Qin drank shyly. "Qin Pingan, can you do it?" Su Xingjiu and Lu Jiqing used to be here as guests, and the surname Lu would not drink so much. Bai Shou said with sorrow, "Master, you are the incumbent master of Pianran Peak anyway, and you are not serving guests well. Accompany Qin. The mountain lord drink more. I have enough drinking water pipes here and Bai is so good." Qin Pingan waved his hand, "Don't drink too much, wait a moment, we are going to your patriarch's hall to respect the incense. Taihui Jianzong took the post of sovereign Han Huizi, took charge of Huangtong. There are also all the sword repairs of the Zongmen who traveled far away with swords in history and did not return home. 36 of them had previously died on the battlefields of the Great Wall of Jianxi and Beipingzu. There are more sword repairs. Even if they return to the sect alive, they are no longer able to practice qishir, let alone sword repair. Moreover, the sword repairs of Taihui Jianzong Jianxiu have never been ambiguous. They are all within the sect, the highest realm, the most powerful one. Therefore Taihui Jianzong was greatly injured. The first sword sect in Beiju Luzhou, now there is only one sword repairman in the Yupu realm. Lu Jinglong Whitehead. Qin Pingan Ningyao. Today there are only 4 sword repairmen who walked into the Patriarch Hall of Taihui Sword Sect. Unlike other sects in Xinjia Hills, in this lobby, not only hanging statues of the ancestors of the past, but also all the sword repairs who died on the battlefield of hanging statues. Lu Jinglong, Qin Pingan and Ningyao respectively handed 3 sticks of incense and smiled. I believe that my master and Huang Shishu, and all the sword repairmen with hanging statues, will be very happy to meet both of them. A last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and a sword repairman of the ascending realm of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Qin Pingan held the incense in both hands and said in a deep voice, Luopishan Qin Pingan. I would like to pay tribute to the sages. Ningyao stood by with a solemn expression. The Great Wall of Sword Qi Ningyao. Respect everyone. There is no complicated etiquette. 2 foreigners entered this patriarch hall, just to respect the 3 incense, just a word. Qin Pingan walked to the entrance of the patriarch hall, crossed the threshold, looked back, and after retracting his gaze, he closed his sleeves with his arms around the railing of the square outside, leaning against the railing. Why didn't he participate in the Confucian temple discussion? Lu Jinglong shook his head and said indifferently, You can't die anymore. I don't dare, but I really can't. I'm afraid I will go to the Confucian temple. Qin Pingan was silent for a moment and asked, I heard that some people have the courage to speak out and think that Taihui sword sect is empty? Lu Jinglong smiled bitterly and said, Human emotions. Qin Pingan said, You can bear it but I can't. Lu Jinglong raised his head slightly, looked into the distance and said softly, It's just that the contemporary lord of the Taihui sword sect can tolerate it. In fact, the sword repairer Lu Jinglong can't tolerate it. Qin Pingan turned to Ningyao. Ningyao nodded and said, We are waiting here. Between Qin Pingan and Ningyao, it was often the case at critical moments, and there was never a word of extra. Qin Pingan stretched out his sleeves and grabbed Lu Jinglong. Go. Ask the sword. Lao Tzu covered his face. Who the knew who? So what if I don't admit it? The atmosphere in Beiju Luzhou is so good. If you don't have this awareness, you will still be mixed up with the rivers and lakes and go down the mountain. Qin Pingan has a lot of anti-frontal skins. It is a must-have item for walking around the world. There are young, middle-aged and elderly people, even women, and more than one. I heard that the sect with few sword repairs has been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi once in history, and has never been there again for hundreds of years, because an old ancestor in the sect passed on sword repair. Just past the Daoxian mountain, I had a fight with the local sword repairman and broke up. Since the city has not gone, let alone killing monsters. Especially in the last 100 years, all the long-distance sword repairers and Qi trainers in Luzhou and North Ju are all dead. This sect seems to have a higher status on the mountain in the hometown. There is an old ancestor of the fairyland who has been in retreat, the contemporary lord of the Yupu realm, and the guest of the 9 realms of martial arts. However, compared to Xinjiang Mountain where the leaders and sword repairmen of a continent are gathered, it seems that it is still a bit worse. It happens to be used to practice hands first. Lu Jinglong began to discuss details with Qin Pingan. In the end, the 2 men Xuanhuan Yuanyu. Bai Shou was an eye-opener today, and the surnamed Lu Zhen was abducted by Qin Pingan, and asked the sword together? For no reason, he remembered the sword sacrifice of Master and Qin Pingan on the summit of Fuyu country. It seems that some people will naturally become friends as long as they meet? Bai Shou suddenly glanced at Pei Qian not far away. Why is your surname Lu like this, but my uncle Bai is like this? The white-haired boy said in amazement, The friends of the ancestors of the hidden officials are not simple. The Lu Jiqing of the Golden Crow Palace is in the Jade Realm, and there is little suspense. As for whether he can be an immortal in the future depending on good luck, there is some hope. And this young master of the Taihui sword sect seems to be only 100 years old, right? It was already an extremely stable bottleneck in the Jade Pu realm. Within 100 years the immortals will start and within 1,000 years they will rise. Very slow? That is the sword repair of the fairyland and the ascension realm. As for the young Taoist priest on the mountain, the white-haired boy was too lazy to say anything. What Zhang Shanfeng lacks now is a strong enough physique, a place that can carry that Dao fist. Ning Yao added, there are many friends who are not simple, but in fact there are more simple friends. Qin Ping and the white-haired boy has no objection. Ning Yao looked at the disappearance of the blue shirt in the distance and said, if Sect Master Lu can enter the Ascendant Realm, he will be both offensive and defensive. Both offensive and defensive. Especially there is a very character. This sentence was spoken by Ning Yao and even a Jianxiu who had already ascended to the realm. In her opinion, Lu Jinglong's current Jade Purity realm does not lose the strongest sword cultivators in the Great Wall's history. Today's Feishing City, some people have begun to review the old calendar, one of which is about the selection of the 10 great sword immortals in Jade Pu realm. For example, there is Wu Qingpei among them, but the selection of this sword repairman is not the ability to catch and fight, mainly due to Wu Qingpei's most suitable for warfare flying sword, so the ranking is extremely low. In addition, the hermit Qin Pingan was naturally selected without any suspense. Fei Shencheng's wine table made a lot of noise about this, not arguing about whether Qin Pingan could be included in the list, but for ranking high and low. The hidden officials, criminal officials, and Quan Mansion's 3-line sword repairs held their own opinions. The white-haired boy asked curiously, why the hidden official ancestor must take Lu Jinglong to travel through China? Ning Yao hadn't really thought about this problem before. At this moment she thought about it and smiled, maybe it's with Sect Master Lu so he can be too lazy to think about things? Qin Pingan's long trips did not go easily. Either he is worried about the impermanence of the world, or he needs to be careful to protect others. But if there is Lu Jinglong by his side, Qin Pingan will feel at ease so he can just use his sword and punch? Ning Yao planned to wait for Qin Pingan to come back and discuss with him whether it was feasible. She wants to take the initiative to serve as the honorable guest of the Taihui sword sect, but this involves the Howrans Mountain rules and taboos, and he will leave the question to him and he will decide. Oh, someone claims to be the head of the family. Ning Yao remembered something, turned his head and smiled with Pei Qian. Although Guizhuzhou didn't say anything, she can see that she missed you, the big sister. The little bamboo box you lent her, she often wipe. On Pei Qian's side, she spread out her arms as her master, hanging a black girl while hanging a white-haired boy. 2 short winter melons are competing in the water, legs hanging in the air. When Pei Qian heard the name Guizhuzhou, he looked a little weird and didn't know what to say for a while. When he grows up, Pei Qian will often think of Guizhuzhou, the nominal little junior sister, during his travels, but every time he thinks about it, in addition to distress, he also has a headache. When Pei Qian was a child, he followed the big white goose to the Great Wall of Jianghu to find his master. As a result, a girl who claimed to be a little junior fell from the sky. When the master asked people about fist, when he beat gongs and drums on the wall and talked to himself, she would often bend her knees and legs on purpose to be level with Pei Qian's head. Otherwise she would just say something empathetic. Sister, why don't we go to the steps to talk? I always cocked my to talk to you, squatting like a pit, not a lady. Ugh. At that time, Pei Qian couldn't quarrel with Guizhuzhou, nor could he keep up with Guizhuzhou's wild ideas and rationale. With the exception of Pei Qian on the master's side, as with anyone, she was not a happy child, nor a master who would suffer until she met Guizhuzhou. Even now, Pei Qian still feels that he is really wrong. But Pei Qian was very happy and Guizhuzhou never went away in the war that year. The strangeness of Baixian Pei Qian made me wonder how sacred this Guizhou wine was. The white-haired boy released his hand, landed and stood still, looking at the white-head with his hands folded. He paced slowly and said with a smile, "Your name is Whitehead?" Baishou touched his head and nodded with a smile, just like saying, "That girl, your name is Baishou." The white-haired boy was old-fashioned and nodded. A good name has a meaning. When the Whitehead returns to plant Wansong, it will be harvested in a light rain. Whitehead, surprised, said, "The little girl's family, don't you ask whether you are young or not in college?" The white-haired boy pouted his lips, and then borrowed a blank account book from Xiaomi Li. Pei Qian carried a bamboo box and a trekking pole in his arms. Standing on the railing, he raised his eyes and looked at the white clouds and the blue sky. "I remember when Grandpa Chui taught boxing in the last session of the bamboo building, he once said that your master, who has poor martial arts qualifications, dared to slack off in martial arts, and was distracted to practice Shilatsi swordsmanship. Relying on Qin Pingan to carry forward, most of them are not up to the task, they are very hung up, so you who are his apprentice don't be idle, you can't be lazy. Martial arts, fist and academic research are very simple, but just say, 3 days all diligent, yesterday, today and tomorrow. So after you Pei Qian leaves the bamboo building, you have to take a small breath, and in the future you have to teach Hauran Takashi. Know what it means? The world fists out of Luapa Mountain. Meeting Master, her life is like a cold winter. Some people carry spring from the sky. Ning Yao walked to Pei Qian's side, isolated a small world with his sword aura, and asked softly, "Since I have become a sword repairman, this is a good thing, why not tell your master?" Pei Qian Yen said with a guilty conscience, "Master always said that greed is too much to chew, and I don't think I have any talent for practicing swords. Therefore, in recent years, Pei Qian has not been practicing swordsmanship, always abiding by the agreement he made with Grandpa Chui. He has been diligent for 3 days and can't be distracted when practicing boxing. After all, that madness sword technique was just a joke when I was young, so I couldn't take it seriously." Ning Yao smiled and said, "Then I won't tell your master about this for now." Pei Qian nodded vigorously. Ning Yao asked, "Have you named your natal flying sword?" Pei Qian flushed and shook his head, but with a thought, he sacrificed a flying sword hovering between her and Ning Yao, about 3 inches long with a sharp edge. In fact, there are names, but Pei Qian didn't have the embarrassment to tell her madam. Under the guidance of Pei Qian's mind, the previous natal flying sword was instantly divided into 7 swords, but they were more slender and different in color. Ning Yao looked at it intently, nodded in approval and said, "It is absolutely possible to rank first in the Summer Palace." Ning Yao reminded, "In the future when you confront others, don't sacrifice this flying sword lightly." Pei Qian nodded and agreed. Then Pei Qian hesitated. Ning Yao doubted, "Say what you have." Pei Qianzhuang courageously asked, "Madam, when is the banquet?" Ning Yao blinked, "You said Lu Xianying and Yu Qianyue don't know the specific time, you ask your master to go." Pei Qian smiled and said, "Okay, I ask master to go." After a discussion in the Confucian temple was over, the monks dispersed. There was an outsider on the transcontinental ferry of Liu's family in Iazhou. The old king of Luzhou and Beiju went to Yen, and had a fight with Wu Tan, the martial sage of Tonghizhou, which was a tie. Wang Fushuan felt that he had no face to return to Beiju Luzhou. Wang Fushuan went to Iazhou with a pair of masters and disciples from Leigong Temple. Anyway, Lu Caishan's transcontinental ferry made it easy to eat and drink without spending money. Damn, we are from the rivers and lakes of Luzhou and North Ju, go out on money? Just rely on friends. Besides, on the side of this weak girl Xiang, Wang Fu was sure of winning. Nothing else, only Lu Sui's face and figure are also pleasing to the eye. If you were a few hundred years younger, your appearance would be worse than Pei Xiang, it would only be better and more masculine. I guess that little girl Lu Suiyu would not be able to take her eyes off. After Wang Fushuan boarded the ship, he didn't have a good face and he was really aggrieved. He asked Wu Pan for a fist, but there were not many significant spectators. Compared to the Chao and Chen fight from the Gongda Lin to the Confucian Temple Square and then to the sky, it's incomparable. As soon as the Confucian Temple discussion was over, many monks had already left. The two sides played late, and the selection of locations was not as frantic as the two young men. Furthermore, Wang Fushuan and Wu Tan, the two end-of-life martial artists, are a bit older than Chao Ci and Qin Pingyan, who are now in their early 40s. The 3 people in the house were all pure martial arts and Wang Fu was furious. Even if I killed Wu Tan, Qin Pingyan didn't just slap Chao Ci on the cheek. He became even more famous. I was so angry. Gong Delin had a fist with that kid. When Lu Suiyu was drinking, he raised Erlang's legs and tiptoes the half-taken embroidered shoes. He smiled and said, "Is the younger man blind or the older man's brain confused? Isn't it that Wu Tan nearly killed you?" Wang Fu slapped the handle of the chair, blowing his beard and staring at him. "I'm really desperate. Both are dead." The old man's words didn't brag. Pei Xiang had poured himself a bowl of wine before, but didn't drink, just wiped the green bamboo flute with a piece of white silk. The bamboo flute is made of green bamboo. In his early years he was still a martial artist of 9 realms, and was fortunate to attend the Qingshan banquet with friends. As a result, all of them were miserable by Aliang Keng. After a misunderstanding, the temple in Zhuhai Dongtian gave a piece of precious fine bamboo to the old woman. Later, Aliang was very worried and said that Xiang, you are so miserable. He was insulted if he was seen through and I couldn't bear it. Pei Xiang couldn't understand the meaning, only that it was a Liang who was drinking the ecstasy soup again, and didn't care about it. After returning to the Leigong Temple in Mahu Mansion, he figured out what it meant and was dumbfounded. There is a yellowed pearl in the bamboo flute ear, which is just an ordinary pearl. It turns yellow over time and is worthless. A handsome-looking martial artist who has been able to beat a continent of martial arts for many years, would he not have his own quack story? The white robe jade belt is not the green flute, and the Legong temple Peixiang. If you are willing to go out and walk the rivers and lakes, you will be easily recognized by the monks on the mountain. Peixiang glanced at the handle of the chair on Wang Feiyan's side, cracked like a net. The fairy is Liu's, you remember to lose money. Wang Fuxin said, it's okay to lose money, you lend me some money first. Looking at this old man's posture, it seems that borrowing money from someone is for the right person. Wang Fu complained, on the side of the Confucian temple, things are not easy to do. The two juniors asked about fists so much and they didn't say hello to us. At any rate, we are the great masters of martial arts. Otherwise the old man can give the two juniors some pointers. Pick out a few flaws in the boxing technique. Lu Suiyu stood up suddenly, clasped his fists and said, Master, I won't go back to Iaizhao. The look in the eyes of the old man from Luzhou and Beiju really made her feel crooked. Peixiang nodded and smiled, actually I've been waiting for you to say this. Go ahead, try to go early and return early and make a good end. If you have a chance, meet on the battlefield over there. Wang Fuyin, Peixiang, and Wu Tan, among them the great masters of martial arts, are far behind Pei Cup and Zhang Tiaoxia. Therefore they need to cooperate with the dynasties of each continent to rush to the wild. Scheduling. Lu Suiyu got up and left, jumped off the ferry. Yufeng went south as fast as thunder. Just now, Wang Fuyun glanced at the woman's back from the corner of his eyes, and when he was sure that Lu Suiyu had left the ferry, Wang Fuyun drank a bowl of wine, quenched his thirst with the wine, changed his sitting position and touched the crotch. Both hips and pedals dangled so much that I panicked. Peixiang said helplessly, you are a senior at any rate, don't be so old and rude. Wang Fu sneered and said, I just looked, did you touch it? Peixiang didn't bother to struggle with this kind of problem, and asked sternly, why did you get into trouble back then? Wang Fuxuan looked calm. Why? Naturally he couldn't get a punch, so he had to drive himself crazy. Peixiang sighed. Wang Fuyin lowered his voice and asked, Xiang, do you think I and Lu Suiyu are not a good match? Are there any dramas? You have to seize the opportunity to raise the good deeds of my generation for nothing. Peixiang waved his hand helplessly. What's the mess? I advise you not to think about it. Wang Fu rubbed his chin in shock. Is it true? Peixiang looked strange and said helplessly, my disciple, I only like women. Wang Fu was still not giving up. Only? Peixiang nodded. Without giving up, Wang Fu asked tentatively, can't she treat me as a wife? Peixiang endured this old man for a long time. He couldn't bear it. He cursed, smelly shameless old thing, disgusting, not disgusting. You don't look in the mirror by yourself? Girl, Xiang is so unkind even if she scolds others. Wang Fu laughed loudly, I am teasing you, it makes you anxious. Wang Fuxuan suddenly reduced his smile and Chao Peixiang raised his brows. You said it's a coincidence, she likes women. Peixiang got goosebumps. Wang Fujin rolled his eyes and shook his head. This thin-skinned Xiang girl, with her back leaning back on her chair, took a sip of wine and exclaimed, I saw Chao Xiaichin Pingan. These young people are really unreasonable and there is no Wang Fa. They are younger than Li Er and Song Changjing. Think about my own time for hundreds of years, except for those who have been in prison. I didn't slack off for a moment in my boxing and kicking skills. I really feel that practicing boxing is meaningless. Peixiang was still angry and what was unpleasant, then don't practice. Wang Fuxin threw the hip flask out of the ferry and smiled, young people practice martial arts for an invincible hand. Old people practice martial arts and the spirit is no longer, because if you don't practice you will die. But now you can only wait. Die, it's not so happy. The room was silent, and thereafter only the sound of drinking. Wang Fu bluntly asked, I can't touch it? Lu Suiyu is your disciple, not your wife. Why do you stop it as a matter of wishful thinking? Peixiang slapped the handle of the chair, get your eggs out. Wang Fu was aggrieved, am I really gone? You don't want to stay? Then I really won't leave. I have to change my position to drink. Wang Fu just got up. Peixiang had already smashed the chair where Lu Suiyu had been seated. Wang Fushu sat back in his seat and shook his hip flask. There is another pity in life. Peixiang suddenly turned his head, looked serious, and looked at the grumpy and disrespectful old man. Wang Fu nodded in shock, arms crossed his chest, and turned his head to look at the sea of clouds outside the house. I will give the last punch in my life. Beiju Luzhou should not only have sword repairing and handing swords. At least the fist of my Wang Fulua fell on the mountains and rivers over there, and it was not lonely to be accompanied by the swordsmanship of Han Huizi in the past. Outside the ferry house, white clouds passed by. Bayan's life is over. On the same ferry, it may be Howren's richest family in the world and they are working on an account. Because Qin Pingan took the initiative to ask to serve as the secret guest of the Liu family of Aijo. The salaries of Kaching are given to the Liu family as a rule once every 10 years. Because of the different ranks, the immortal money is very different. Yupu Realm Sword Repair. Ending Takeo. Hermit. One of the 10 young people in the world. The closed disciple of Wensheng's line, the left and right juniors, Lu Shilas Jr. and Pei Chen's master. The Lord of Luapa Mountain won 3 consecutive games with Yunyao, Jiang Longxiang and Ma Zhuxian. Chao Si's nose and face were swollen. This is Lu Yu's settlement. The woman is very pleased and the son's abacus is very shrewd. Since the daughter-in-law and son felt that this should be done, Lu Jubao had no objection. The god of wealth had a soft voice and smiled and asked, "How much did it cost to pack the fast in Parrot Island this time?" The woman looked confused. She remembers what this does. Isn't it embarrassing to you? Lu Jubao raised his thumb and pressed his forehead. It doesn't matter how much you spend, but rough bookkeeping is still necessary. Suddenly, in the woman's delicate and hydrated eyes, there was immediately grievances, complaints, sadness, regrets, you were wrong. Like that landscape painting, the layers of colors are added together at the end, as if it is a silent sentence. You shouldn't marry you, please say a few nice things. Lu Jubao couldn't bear such scenery the most in his life. After watching for a while, Lu Jubao smiled and said, "Okay, let's talk about it next time." The woman nodded, turned her head and chatted with her son, how she looked like before. Lu Jubao doesn't matter. As if a piece of colorful clouds gathered in the eyes. This is not beautiful, what is it? The reason why he asked this was because he wanted to see this scene. Lu Yuzhou has long been accustomed to this, and his parents are always like this, very tired and crooked. Even in the mountains, the appearance of Lu Yuzhou is a typical late arrival. So it's really a favorite. When Lu Yuzhou was a teenager, he had an open and honest man conversation with his father. It's really in the family that there are too many things like that. Every family has the embarrassment of no money, and rich noises. Therefore, in Liu's ancestral hall, there are often women crying for life, and there will be a man kneeling over there without saying a word or not paying attention. "Father, are you outside?" "Okay." "Is there any jianghu zangjiao?" "Nothing." "Is it used to be, now there is none and there is no guarantee that there will be no later?" "Nothing." "What's next, can you say it right now?" "Of course. When your mother just married me, I told her, making money, don't worry, we will be rich. Your mother just smiled at the time, maybe she didn't take it seriously." "Right." "When my mother married you, our old Lu family was already rich, right? There is money in the family but I don't have it." From a concubine forgot?" The woman got up and left and let the father and son continue to chat. She was on her own ferry, and some friends on the mountain who could not even afford an intercontinental ferry, went to them and chatted. As for some words, she took it seriously. Don't know the falsehood hidden in it? Of course she just likes to listen. And she especially likes 2 of them. They hide and tuck in the side of her man and change their heads and poses. Isn't it a bunch of vulgar fans? Can you see, can't eat, or are you angry? She still has this confidence in her own man. It didn't take long until the woman left. A transcontinental ferry that could not even be slashed by the Ascension Realm swordsman was broken, so that no one survived except Lu Jubao. Even Wang Fushuan and Pei Axiang's 2 boundless martial artists died on the spot. Just like a great monk in the Ascension Realm, he first took full advantage of the time and place, and then he chose to die with Lu Jubao in a close proximity. It's a pity that Lu Jubao, in a slender robe, still sat on the chair unscathed with a calm expression. He just took a golden lotus from his sleeve and picked off one of the petals. After a while, the ferry was restored. It's not just as simple as turning time back. After several times, the ferry slammed again and again, and Lu Jubao took off the lotus again and again. For the last time, the woman got up again. Lu Jubao's eyes were gentle and he helped her straighten her sideburns and said to go together. On this trip, Lu Jubao solved the fairyland monk who was worshipped by his own family, and the hands and feet of this person on the ferry. This person has been in charge of this intercontinental ferry for many years, and he is still a famous battle master. As for why he did so much so that he didn't even want his life, Lu Jubao just couldn't ask why. After Lu Jubao returned to the house, Lu Yuzhou remained unaware. Lu Jubao didn't intend to mention this to Lu Yuzhou either. A man protecting his wife and children was justified and not worth talking about. After Lu Jubao took his seat again, he just drank silently, intending to talk to Lu Yuzhou, his son. Drinking to moisturize his throat, Lu Jubao was about to speak, and Lu Yuzhou immediately said, "Father, don't give money to magic weapons anymore. It's actually quite stupid to carry so many things on your body." Lu Jubao said helplessly, "Father is just telling you something." Lu Yuzhou smiled and said, "That's it. Yuzhou, you can be generous in dealing with people and friends because you are Lu Jubao's son, and you are destined to not be short of money in your life. But remember one thing, but you can't spend money and be a fool. When you go out, it's convenient to be with others. Everywhere is convenient with others. It is convenient with yourself. You can't be stingy when you are in emergency. But at home there must be rules, and you have to talk about being close and close. The bigger a family, the more stable the rules. Of course, stability is not blindly strict. But there is no strictness and there is no security. So in our Lu family, the one who can beat people most is not the patriarch, nor the old men sitting in the front 2 rows in the ancestral hall, but the masters and gentlemen who were invited to the school by his father heavily. When he was a child, when he kept the rules, he didn't eat a few beets. When you get up and go out, you will have to endure hardship. The key is that you will feel right after suffering. So even if at some point the gentlemen are playing irrationally or playing hard, Dad doesn't care. Who dares to persuade them to stop? Which woman feels distressed and complains constantly? Dad will let their men first, putting aside the master and the child, and then in front of me, I slapped the girl severely and slapped it. If the hit was light, then hit it again. Teacher, no matter how hard the shot was, how many days would the child hurt if he fell with a slap? There is an even bigger reason to say that the children of the Lu family will also be beaten, and they will be beaten at home. In fact, there is a bigger truth, which means that I made the first money for the children of the Lu family early. And this invisible money is one of the foundations of all Liu's children in the future. How many parents don't care for their children? But the world outside the door does not feel distressed. Lu Yuzhou listened carefully, but it was inevitable that he was puzzled. After enduring it for a long time, he couldn't help but said, "I have understood these truths a long time ago, let alone you know that I know." Lu Jubao was a little bit frustrated. His father was outside of money, and he was not a reasonable person. These words could only be said after a long period of time. He was a little bit frustrated and pretended not to know. Lu Jubao had to offer an assassin and smiled and asked, "Father, ask you, why we Lu family spend so much money secretly and give it to the vassals of the major dynasties under the mountain to set up schools and let the teachers of xianxia, everyone is not short of money, and life is not embarrassing? In the past 100 years or so, the countries under the xianxia mountain have been very diligent in setting up schools. However, it is hidden in many measures similar to the establishment of righteous villages in various places, and it is not obvious. Because that embroidered tiger once approached Lu Jubao before he became a teacher of the country, and said that if most teachers in a country are only poor, or smarter than a marketer, then this country there is no hope. The strong will lead to the weak, and the weak will always be weak. Is it difficult for you Aizhou to recapture the north, from Jiluzu? Difficult to climb to the sky. Aizhou will be no better than the place where the sword is repaired like a cloud in 1,000 years. Is it really that hard? In fact, it's not difficult. You can win back at most 300 to 500 years with only one desk. If there is such a day, the scholars under the mountain, all scholars are vigorous and vigorous, then there will be hope everywhere on the mountains of Aizhou. Lu Jubao, you are rich and rich. Why not? Embroidered tiger Chui Yang's words are like teaching Liu's god of wealth how to make money by spending money. Lu Yuzhou listened to his father's question and said, "Isn't it just for relying on bit by bit of changing customs and changing customs, helped Aizhou grab the northern character from Jiluzu?" Lu Jubao couldn't speak for a long time, so he nodded, pretending to be profound, and said, "Yes, it's right, I still think more shallowly, I need to think more about this in the future." Lu Yuzhou casually said, "It's necessary, I don't need to practice how to practice, and I don't have to think about how to make money. I'm just thinking about everything every day." Lu Jubao is very pleased, a good son with high ambitions. As for this god of wealth, Aizhou, who rarely fights with others, the opportunity for the future 14 realms of harmony is in the material. It was the snowflake money that day. A liuxia boat, with clouds everywhere as a fairy, appeared in the clouds again and again, as if the immortal had used the magical powers of Shuti mountain and river again and again, and did not consume a little spiritual energy. Therefore, even though Lu Xiaozhou had a high cost of construction, The Confucian temple still included this ferry on the list, and during the discussion the monks had no objection to this. The owner of the ferry is a hillside man who did not participate in the discussion, one of the ancestors of the top sect of Middle-earth, the great sword immortal Liuzhou. There are no tables, chairs or beds in the house, and there is an embroidered tiger copybook hanging on the wall. It is not a copy, but an original handwriting by Cui Yang. On the flower table in the corner, there is a fairy family bonsai, equipped with a pocket mountain river, a white cloud hanging in the air, lightning and thunder, golden light flickering, rumbling, faintly visible a few gold and white color filaments chaotic in the cloud. Soon, there was a torrential rain, a veritable dragon and rain. Monk Liuzhou, wearing a purple robe, sits on an emerald futon with a black hosta on his head. This big sword immortal with an eccentric temperament is recognized as a crown jade. More than 100 years ago, this genius of swordsmanship who was expected to rise to the ascendant realm, put his swordsmanship to good use without practicing, and Liu Zhou turned to chess. It was an extremely sensational event in Haoran. In the past few years, Zhongtu Shenzhou's landscape mansion reported a lot of discussions. If it weren't for the reputation of Xianxian Mountain and Lu Jianxian, it is estimated that Liu Zhou would be frustrated and crazy. Sitting opposite him at this moment is a young woman Jian Xiu, with a handwritten inkstone hanging from her waist, which was given by Liu Zhou in his early years. The sword fairy also personally engraved a poem about swords, which is considered to be for an anonymous disciple. A kind of expectation. The woman is the wish of Jianzong Meishan, and she is also an anonymous disciple of Liu Zhou. Every 10 years she is eligible to go to Xianshan and ask Liu Zhou for kendo. The golden core swordsman who was less than 100 years old actually had very good kendo aptitude, and she also possessed 3 extremely rare flying swords. The time spent on refining swords far exceeded that of ordinary swordsmanship, delaying the advancement of her realm. Su Xinhuang and Liu Zhou talked about the experience of this trip one by one. Liu Zhou asked a few occasionally, it was just a few wishes that he didn't care about the personnel more seriously. For some reason, even if Liu Zhou was not interested in the young hermit who was born out of the sky, he was more interested in asking little Baidi Fu Su about her. Su Xini caught a glimpse of the copybook and couldn't help but ask a question that had been curious for decades. Master Liu, did you really lose to Xiuhu with the flying sword Jin Sui in your early years? Even if Cui Yang is dead, he is still willing to call him Xiuhu when he makes a wish when he mentions him now, but he dare not call him by name. Liu Zhou smiled and nodded. It's just that I lost to Cui Yang in chess and I didn't compete with him in swordsmanship. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. The reason why he was so concerned about Fu Su was because Liu Zhou once had a close friend of the teacher, who was also a teacher and a friend. In his previous life, this person was the same as Gu Qingsong. He was once a mountain monk who liked and quarreled very much. He was more courageous. Even if he was as outspoken as Zheng Zhongzhong from the Baidi city, he was even more open to the outside world. He claimed that any Shanshui Dibao in Zhongtu could talk about the matter casually, and he scolded Zheng Zhuzhong. A man in the magic way still has that face, his name is in the middle and his word is immortal? From his point of view, Zheng Zhuzhong only left a surname. Baidi City didn't pay any attention to this. Finally, he made a special trip to the Dragon Gate of the Yellow River Xiadongshan. Because the city among the colorful clouds could not be visited, he went to the Yellow River Xiadongshan. At the top of the waterfall, with Baidi Qing Yaoyao confronted him and said he wanted to have a question with Zheng Zhuzhong. Of course, Zheng Zhuzhong didn't show up. He talked to himself, killed one thing and only talked about one truth. You Zheng Zhuzhong is a man in the magic way. Senshin. You are the devil. Created Baidi City, a demon sect. Can it stand tall in the divine continent of the Middle Earth? Not the devil? In the matter of chess and Dao Feng Rao the world first? Many times for Yamazawa Yeshio fought against the mountain monks? Are you Zheng Zhuzhong still a demon monk? This person is Fu Su in this life. Because the final fate was that the bottleneck of the avenue could not be broken through, and it could not be ascended to the ascendant realm. When the soldiers were dismantled, the souls were all gathered and put into a pair of immortal remains. The ban on the sect of the Banxian Mountain, the formation of the secret realm of the peak, and the fight of his friend Liu Zhou's sword cannot change this ending. Zheng Zhuzhong is in the mountain of exile as if he were in a land of no one. In the end, Zheng Zhuzhong moved a chair and took a seat, holding a mess of the monk's soul in his palms and smiling. I am reasonable with you, not the reason why you are unreasonable. A natal flying sword, Jin Sui, was stripped of Liu Zhou's soul at will by that person. At that time, his face was blood-stained, his back was against the wall, and he could maintain a line of clarity so that he would not faint and said angrily, Where did the Lord Zheng am just arguing with him? It's not being taught. The truth is not in words. A monk on the mountain can do anything with only ears and no eyes. It doesn't matter, he was reborn in this life without eyes. I will give him a pair in the next life. Zheng Zhuzhong put the soul of a sword fairy in his sleeve, stood up and smiled with Lu Zhou. I am the devil. In the end, Zheng Zhuzhong reminded Lu Zhou not to talk too much about this, otherwise he must be careful that he will be dumb in his next life. Therefore, the former great sword immortal of the Banxian mountain became Fusu of Baidi city. Zaibaidi Fusu. Quietly silent. In the night, a ferry drove in the sea of clouds, and a bright moon in the sky seemed to guard the road. Chai Bofu, as the genealogical monk of the 8 classics of Zheng'er of Baidi city, is not passed down by the ancestors of the ancestor, nor is it passed down by Han Xiaosa and others. Don't look at him being pitted by Lu Qiqing time and time again. There was still a lot of ostentation everywhere in Baidi city. Every time he showed up, it was not Lu Qiqing or Gu Kan beside him, so almost no one dared to provoke this new face with erratic realm. But Chai Bofu has been fortunate to see Zheng Zhuzhong many times in the past 20 years, but he has never communicated with any words. Chai Bofu thinks this is reasonable. He only thinks about the day he enters the Yupu realm, maybe he will be able to communicate with this city lord. Let's talk, it's not too late to fall. Never imagined that on the way to leave the Confucian temple this time, I had a conversation with the city lord. On the ferry, Gu Kan just found Chai Bofu and said that the master asked him to sit in the house. Chai Bofu had to suspend his practice and withdraw his mind from his childhood. Hearing this, Chai Bofu was not at all overjoyed, on the contrary, it seemed that he had heard bad news and suffered a bolt from the blue. I didn't do anything to deceive the teacher and destroy the ancestors. Where does the city lord need to clean the door himself? Following Gu Kan walking in the corridor, Chai Bofu thought nothing, it was useless anyway, and came to the door of Zheng Zhuzhong. Gu Kan knocked on the door lightly and pushed the door, leaving the road sideways. Chai Bofu raised his foot alone and crossed the threshold, as if wuxia broke into Long Tan. Gu Kan gently closed the door and returned to his room to continue to refine the qi and practice a secret ghost cultivation technique in Baidi city. Zheng Zhuzhong put down the books in his hand, raised his head, and stretched out a palm toward the ups and downs of his life and smiled. Sit. Chai Bo Talisman, who was not alive, obeyed his orders and took his seat subconsciously. He just waited until his buttocks touched the chair, then immediately raised it again and then slowly fell. It seems that facing this learned heaven and human, great wisdom like a demon, acting out of the ordinary, demeanor like a god, what he does is wrong and what he doesn't do is also a mistake. Chai Bofu was sweating like rain just sitting on a chair. He became a rookie. So much so that the guy named Long Bo didn't even notice that there was a pretty girl sitting in the house. Zheng Zhuzhong said, Chai Bofu, don't feel at a loss what to do at this moment. It's a gaffe to advance and retreat. Without a sense of awe, he will die quickly. Chai Bofu looked dumb, just nodded. Zheng Zhuzhong smiled and asked, is it hard to practice in Baidi city these years? In such a moment, Chai Bofu almost burst into tears because of his grievances. Could it be painful? As if a bitter gall was broken time and time again, it was so miserable that it had to be dumbfounded. It's just that knowing that it's useless to scream and complain, this old Yuaning, who was once a master in the world, can only hold back his teeth. However, Chai Bofu just nodded at the moment, still not daring to say a word. To be honest, sitting here, Chai Bofu felt that even if he said something, he was offending Mr. Zheng. Zheng Zhuzhong said, Han Xiaosa, Lu Daochun, Fu Su, and the others may all think that Gu Kan is a natural descendant of the city of Baidi. As for you, you are not very much looked down upon. Chai Bofu could only nod his head. There is nothing to be embarrassed about this kind of thing. Compared to the little demon Gu Kan, he is really incomparable. That little has too many eyes, the key is to learn things too fast. Zheng Zhuzhong poured a cup of tea, pushed it gently on the table, and slid to the edge of the table in front of Chai Bofu, smiling, drink when you think about people and drink tea when you think about things. Chai Bofu was flattered and immediately leaned forward, picked up the teacup with both hands, trembling, bowed his head and took a sip. Zheng Zhuzhong said, the Buddhists say that this world is a whirling world. A person is not afraid of suffering, and he is afraid of not knowing why he suffers. Just like the market in the mountains, you can't earn money. You can't just complain about the world's coldness. Others look down on people. At a loss, pain and happiness are no better than jiazi. Those of my generation who practice Taoism in the mountains have no such heart, and it is difficult to prove the Tao, and they cannot live forever. Of course, when the manpower is exhausted, You will find that there are some money that you really can't earn and some things that you really can't do. But only at this moment you have the right to say one thing, it is destined, the number of days. I am so. Speak, understand? Whispered. The number one monk in the world with the word huaixin is like a schoolmaster with a very good temper, preaching to a student who is worthy of teaching. Chai Bofu nodded, shook his head again and finally spoke the first sentence, saying sincerely, the juniors don't know what they understand. Is it what the city lord wants me to understand? The truth can't be simpler. How could it be simple for people like Zheng Juzhong to talk, do things and practice? No matter how the words return to the basics, Chai Bofu always firmly believes that the city lord will never say something that he understands. In the years of practice in Baidi City, Chai Bofu really understood a truth. It's easy for people with good luck to learn. People with good luck seem to be right. It's hard for a dumb person to learn from a smart person. Zheng Juzhong pointed towards the center of the eyebrows of the Chai Bofu, with from a distance, and the Chai Bofu seemed to be fascinated, and instantly returned to the Yuaning state. In Han Qiao's eyes on the side of the house, what she saw was Guqin knocking on the door, standing outside the door, giving way to the road, and then the brother asked Guqin to enter the house with Chai Bofu, and then asked about Chai Bofu for some practice. The crux of the pass on the upper hand is answered one by one. So Han Qiao was a little surprised. I don't know why the brother is willing to talk nonsense with this waste. No, Chai Bofu is indeed a real waste, but the brother never talks nonsense. Could it be that the stones of other mountains can be used to hack jade? But it is actually taking the opportunity to instruct disciple Guqin on the Dao Fa? After Guqin opened the door at that time, only the master Zheng Juzhong was playing music alone in the room, and there was no teacher and Han Qiao. When he closed the door, he saw Chai Bofu just cross the threshold and his feet fell on his knees. On the ground, I don't know why I can't afford it, crying bitterly. The real Zheng Juzhong, standing by the window, let the Zheng Juzhong sit down, preaching and teaching for Chai Bofu. In fact, Chai Bofu has had such dialogues with Zheng Juzhong more than a dozen times, but Zheng Juzhong was not satisfied with a certain result. He failed to meet his expectations, so he took away Chai Bofu's those memories. Uncut jade needs to be pondered over and over to become beautiful jade. The moon was bright outside the fairy window. The real Zheng Juzhong holding a book with his hands folded. Among those juniors and younger sisters, Zheng Juzhong no longer has much interest in cultivation. For the monks in the Baidi city including Fu Su, the Lord Zheng Juzhong didn't show up very much and he rarely preached with anyone. But in fact, even if it's just a genealogy monk with the worst qualifications in Baidi city, Zheng Juzhong will always study the carvings one by one when he has nothing to do. Most of them will be smoothed out by Zheng Juzhong, or if he is satisfied he will stay. Several monks' unknowingly mindsets will not only help pave the way and build bridges, but they are expected to gradually climb higher, and they will also cut off some seemingly xuanhuan avenues and interrupt them early. It is better to teach people to fish. People like fishing. Zheng Juzhong has always felt that the mountaineering path of the cultivator is not only under his feet, but also in his heart. It was only because Zheng Juzhong's methods were too unaware of ghosts that the city lord seemed like a heavenly man living in seclusion among the colorful clouds, not easy to see. The disciple of Kaishan, Fu Su, practiced swords, and his swordsmanship was getting closer and closer to the ancestor of his dragon slayer. The disciple of the closed door, Guqin, cultivated Taoism. He cultivated Qin Pingan to respect the heaven and the earth and follow the customs. It was also Wu Shuangjiang's superb, solidify all things and turn them into his own use, or the meticulous millions of old bookworms, 3 immortal characters. In the moonlit night. When the window opens under the moon, do you turn the book or read you, or moonlight borrows you to read? One of Zheng Juzhong's avatars once asked Cui Yang, who had identified his roots and feet, once in that xuanhuan cave. Cui Yang asked a great question at the time. Jiao Jiao Mingyue shining on the mirror, looking up to see who is the moon. Is the person in the mirror still me? Zheng Juzhong likes to talk to such smart people. It doesn't take much effort. Even just a few small chats can benefit his own way. He once found 3 ways for himself to enter the 14th realm, all of which are fine, but the difficulty is different and there are some differences. Zheng Juzhong's biggest concern is how to climb into the sky after entering the 14th realm, and which road in the end. Achievement is higher and requires continuous deduction. In that xuanhuan cave, Cui Yang broke one of Zheng Juzhong's avatars. It was considered that the 2 sides met again after the Kaiyin game in the early years. Cui Yang frankly put forward the idea of the soul divided into 2, first striving to become 2 and 3. 1 or more people and then fight for the same person again. Not only did he give out all the steps in detail, Cui Yang also said that he was willing to let Jing Juzhong take the opportunity to observe the road. In fact, the name of Cui Dongshan later was picked up by Jing Juzhong for Cui Yang at the time, saying that he was a good sign. Probably this is a coincidence because one is divided into two, which is actually one of the three paths Jing Juzhong will follow. And Cui Yang is not as free as Zheng Zhongzhong. Once the future situation of the world becomes uncontrollable and compelling, Cui Yang will have to choose another path of no return that is destined to change the color of the world and the world. Cui Yang finally made a decisive decision and persuaded Zheng Juzhong to take this road first. As long as it relies on the 14 realms of the Tao, there will be more possibilities thereafter. Otherwise, if you only take one road to the sky, you must cut off the other two roads. Isn't it boring? After that separation, Cui Yang soon went to his hometown of Beipingzu and served as the teacher of the Great Li State, planning for 100 years, during which he was divided into two, and Cui Dongshan appeared in the world. Unfortunately, there is no more embroidered tiger in the world. The last person Cui Yang saw in the world was not Yaxing, but Jing Juzhong, who rushed to the Great Wall of Sword Chi from the wild world. There was only a very simple question and answer. How so? I really don't want to make my husband sad and disappointed anymore. Fortunately, this has never been the case. What do you want? I hope, Mr. Zheng, I can take care of my little brother in the future, not in Dao Fa, only in Dao Xn, not too much, not too little. Jing Juzhong agreed at the time. Therefore, in Panshui County, Qin Pingan will make an exception. At this moment, Jing Juzhong sighed. Han Xiaosei and Chai Bofu in the house had their own thoughts, and they had their own interests tonight, and they left together. Jing Juzhong raised his hand and tapped the window lightly with the scroll. The sitting Zheng Juzhong clone disappeared and turned into a moonlight, like a robe worn by Zheng Juzhong. People who cultivate Taoism in the world have cultivated the yin and yang gods, which can be regarded as the first time they have gained the Tao, and they are not considered to be a realm of subtle and mysterious. Because almost without exception, once separated from the real body, the mind will be separated from the real body for a short period of time, as long as a few days, to most months and several years. In fact, there will be two people. It is becoming more and more different, unless it is the return of the yin god to the aperture and the yang god to the place, and the respective memories are melted into a furnace, and the Dao Xian needs to be distinguished before it can be considered a new person. Therefore, the 14 realms of the Baidi City Lord's opportunity for harmony is the exception. There are two Jing Juzhong in the world. It's exactly the same, not bad at all. Even if they are separated for thousands of years, they will meet different people with different things, and a certain Taoism will be consistent. So Jing Juzhong is not only the 14th realm. There are still two 14-realm great monks, one person. One is on this Howran ferry, and the other is in the wild Jinshui city. Since Zheng Juzhong is a disciple of the Dragon Slayer and he likes to play chess, it is better to set the barren world to Tuayu Mountain as the slayed dragon on the chessboard. Chun Lupa's previous meeting in the Patriarch's Hall was so solemn that the needle could be heard. The old woman Lin Chain seemed to be out of the way, with only a smile on her face. But in fact, the old woman was the one who sent the letter to Luapa Mountain back then, and the wording of the letter even seemed extremely aggressive, but it seemed that as long as she saw the young sword fairy, the old woman felt that there was nothing wrong with her. Song Lanxiao and Tang Shi looked at each other, and felt that the situation was quite tricky. After all, the mountain was difficult to collect and disperse, but the two of them felt relieved. Because the owner of the mountain, Tan Ling, said that she would leave immediately and walk to Luapa Mountain in person. Gao Song, who was in charge of the money in Xuanlu Garden, but the outside world only regarded Tang Shi as the god of wealth, said he wanted to walk with the mountain lord, but Tan Ling did not agree. The Patriarch Zhanglu asked why the mountain lord didn't go after Qin Jianxian, why bother to take a long way. Song Lanxiao and Tang Shi smiled at each other again, pig brains. In the previous meetings of the Patriarch's Hall, both Zhang Li and Gao Song were in fact fighting on the side of Song Lankio's master. Tan Ling seemed to be a little tired, waved his hand to signal the end of the discussion, leaving Lin Si alone, and asked the old woman about chatting with the Lord Qin. When Tan Ling took the ferry of Song Lanxiao to the Bone Beach and waited for the intercontinental ferry of Fai Ma Zong, this woman, the ancestor of Yuan Ying, was unavoidably worried. I don't know if I arrived at the New Jiashan ferry, and waited until the young lord, whether he can save the situation. And the two people who traveled together and asked the sword sect. Approaching the mountain, Qin Pingan took out 2 pieces of cheeks, covered his face and handed one to Lu Jinglong, saying that there were only 2 on his body and he would use it. Lu Jinglong glanced, did not reach out. Because it is a woman's face. Chen Pingon was still persuading, more vigorous than persuading wine, and said, "Isn't it hypocritical? My generation of swordsmen is upright and cares about what a piece of skin does. Lu Jinglong just used a blindfold and didn't wear the dough." Chen Pingon wailed and said that he had forgotten that there was a leftover dough, and then he passed another one. So two sword repairmen, one old and one young, walked to the foot of the Zongmen Mountain in the pale apricot blossom and bright moon. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.